electronic devices, cell phones, anything like that. As you know, these proceedings are being recorded with audio as well as video, and we do not want those items to interrupt the proceedings. Well, once your case is heard today, we will render a decision on the cases before us. We will deliberate at the end of the hearing. You are free to stay to hear the result for the particular matter, or you can call tomorrow at the zoning office to get the decision. That number is 410-396-4301. Again, that's 410-396-4301 for that civics lesson, and you're welcome to hang around. We will call cases here that, again, have opposition. To the extent cases do have opposition, we'd like to know if you've had an opportunity to talk, and if you haven't, we want to give you that opportunity. We find that affording that opportunity can sometimes help streamline the differences, and who knows, sometimes you find that there is no real opposition if you can come to agreement. With regard to those matters that have opposition, and sorry, Mr. Baumgartner, I do not know which ones they are. If you could stand and at least identify who your opposition is and sort of acknowledge whether or not you've had an opportunity to speak, or if you would like an opportunity to speak, and we will afford that to you as the docket gets called.
The first case with opposition signed in is 2019-171, 5006 Bel Air Road. Anyone in opposition to that case? Mr. Hilliard, is the applicant here? Bozeda o Adentuji Idawu. And have you folks had the opportunity to discuss the appeal?
Yeah.
Would you like that opportunity?
Yeah, this one I could.
Perfect. If you would step out the door to your rear and just come back in after that discussion has taken place. Next one we have a case in which there's opposition that is signed in, 2019-214, 3427 Hickory Avenue. Mr. Gioso, Mr. Prettle, Mr. Barry, they might be outside talking already, which is what we like to see. Next one we have is 2019-229, 230, 231, and 232, Warwick, Winchester, and Whitmore Avenue. Mr. Tiedemann. And anyone in opposition to that case, please stand.
Wow.
Have there been discussions between the applicant and those in opposition to this case? Would you like to have a discussion?
Given the planning department's recommendation, I think that we'll just put it before the board. I don't know that we need to discuss, especially with the number of people here.
Okay.
Very well.
Going down the list further. I believe that's all of the folks in opposition. Did anyone sign in opposition to a case that I have not called?
Yeah, 2400 block of Baltimore Avenue, Broadway.
Sorry, sir, do you,
The second sheet.
what's the address, sir?
2402.
Albion?
Case 233.
Aha, there it is.
Okay. We have that on consent.
Okay. Shay Munoz. All right. Have you folks had the opportunity to discuss?
This was put in without a permit. I want to talk to the board.
Okay. I just, it's very interesting and relevant that we've had a very week of interesting civility from the federal government and the city of Baltimore, that folks are unwilling to speak with one another. But I guess that's beside the point, and we will hear your cases in turn.
So we now have opposition on
I believe so. Yes, sir.
2019-233.
And that is all, Mr. Chairman.
Very well, thank you. At this point, I would typically call the cases that are postponed for everyone's benefit. I do not have on our docket today any cases that are identified as being postponed. There is, however, one case that has been withdrawn, case number 2019-188, 4300 through 4312 Seminole Avenue has been withdrawn. So if anyone is here for that case will not be going forward. I will next call the cases that are have been placed on our consent docket. And again, those cases are those matters for which the zoning board and staff has reviewed the application, and we have sufficient information with which to approve the appeal. When I call the case, if you would come up and line up to my left in the order that the case is called, we'll have each of you sworn in, ask planning department if they have any reports, and then we'll ask if you have anything else to provide, and then we'll go forward. So with that, we'll call the consent cases. First case on the consent docket is case number 2019-215, 1903 Alisana Street, Vasilia Diakomanolis. Okay, there's no show. Next case on the consent docket is no longer 233, but the next case is 2019-236, 6620 Belford Road, Mercedes Pimentel. Come on up, please. We next have case number 2019-238, 4210 Massachusetts Avenue, Mr. Rick Garhart. All right. We also have case number 2019-240, 2801 Guilford Avenue, Russell Trimmer. And finally, case number 2019-245, 704 West Melrose Avenue, Melissa Icky. Do we have all the witnesses sworn at this point?
Raise your right hands, please. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, so we haven't had anyone appear at this point for 2019-215, 1903 Alisana Street. So we'll move on to 2019-236, 6620 Belford Road, Mercedes Pimentel. If you could step over before the mic. And we have this to use a portion of the premises for a 12-child daycare center. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have any reports?
Thank you. Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department recommends approval of this application.
Okay. Ms. Pimentel, is there anything you'd like to add? No?
No.
And let me just be a little more clear. Is there anything else that you'd like to submit for the record that we can take into consideration in connection with the appeal?
No, sir.
All right, very well. Well, the board, having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you. Good luck. Next case, 2019-238, 4210 Massachusetts Avenue. Mr. Garhart?
Yes,
Okay, and this is a request to construct a first-floor rear addition. Is that correct?
yes, it is.
All right. Do we have any planning reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Garhart, is there any additional information or matters you'd like to add?
Other than there's a correction on the application, I noticed it says remove rear porch enclosure
Yes, sir?
and new addition. Well, naturally, we don't want to remove the new addition. We want to add the new addition.
Okay, very
So,
well.
I don't know if it's a typo.
So
handwritten.
noted for the record.
So we have a record of that, and I think we're good.
Okay.
If there's nothing else to add, the board, having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Okay.
Thank you and good luck, sir.
Thank you very much.
Next case, 2019-240, 2801 Guilford Avenue. Mr. Trimmer?
Yes,
And this is a
indeed.
request to use the basement of the premises as a bakery?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports?
The Planning Department recommends approval of this application. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Trimmer?
If there are no questions, then no. Unless
Ma'am?
Yes. Sandy Sparks, Charles Village Civic Association, Chair of the Land Use Committee.
Yes, ma'am.
The Charles Village Civic Association is very pleased to support this important reuse of what had been a liquor store, so.
Very well. Thank you, ma'am.
And I have 5 letters.
You can hand them up, and we will add them to the record. Thank you. Well, Mr. Trimmer, having heard your appeal, the board believes it has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, case number 2019-245, 704 West Melrose Avenue. Melissa, I'm sorry. EK. Very well. This is a request to use the accessory detached garage for recreational space. Is that correct? Okay, I think we'll have a few questions on that, but
Okay.
first, let's get some staff reports if we have them.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, could you tell us what the recreational space will be? What is it going to be?
Yeah, so right now it's a detached garage to just hold lawnmowers and such, but Sean and I are planning to blend our families, and because we can't really afford it, I've owned my house for 23 years and we can't really afford another house in my neighborhood, we thought if we can use this space, I race bikes to put my trainer in and to like have a space to just be away if we need to be away from the blended familyness of us, that we would have a space. And I'm happy to answer like any, I jokingly say it's like the State Farm lady with the she shed burning down, kind of like it's going to be my space to kind of get away if I need to.
Hope it doesn't burn down.
Yeah, it's not going to burn down, but and
Understood.
our neighbors are all of support, and I actually we sent some letters of support, but I have the rest here if you would like.
Certainly.
4 copies?
Oh, there's 4 copies, so
So
yeah, if you need more.
everything- all of them with paper clips.
Yeah.
And vicinity map with the
Okay.
house numbers.
Very well.
We're gonna need your name, sir.
Sean McDonough,
Sean. There's multiple ways to spell it.
SEAN. Welcome.
Well, since we have the floor, let me ask, is it your intent to turn this recreational space into a home away from home, such that it also includes, bedroom, kitchen, shower, like a second home?
Well, we wanted to have a bathroom just because I will be working out in there, and just to take a shower like before work if I want to like go take a shower before I go to work. But no, like just a space to kind of use to have something that's not physically together. Something I don't know how to say it.
The intent would be mostly mornings and afternoons. Since the house is relatively small, I have 2 boys,
Yes, sir.
10, 13. Sort of chaotic times. Again, after school, when the boys are home, Melissa's home, and I haven't been home yet. Those are the primary times when Melissa would be using that space. And then other times where when things get a little tense. My oldest son is on the autism spectrum, so he can exercise my patience, and he's my son. So that's primarily why we're doing that.
And also, the boy's mom passed away last August, so I feel like they need time just to be them sometimes, that I'm not there, because of emotional sort of stuff.
But yes, we are going to sleep together. So she will be in the house overnight.
The accessory structure won't have a full kitchen,
No.
correct? And it won't have a separate meter for utilities.
I don't know how that works. Like, I think there just could run an electric line from what we have.
It currently has electric, so
Yeah, it has electric in it anyway. Yeah.
Would you be acceptable of an approval of your appeal with a condition that the structure not be utilized as a second dwelling?
Yeah.
Very well. Well, the board, having heard your appeal, I believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal with the stated conditions.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe the applicant for appeal 2019-215 has arrived.
Very well. I'll call that case. 2019-215, 1903 Alisana Street, Vasilia Diakomanolis.
Right up here to the right, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Nikolaidis, and I'm an interpreter for the Greek language. Mrs. Diakomanolis is here. Her attorney was supposed to be here, Mr. Happer, but obviously he hasn't showed up. So we'll go forward with the case. And we apologize. We went over to 417, and they did not know where he was, so it was a mixed up. So we apologize for being late.
Your name, ma'am?
No worries.
Maria Nikolaidis, Nicolaidis. And it's Maria, Maria.
And we have this as a request to use first floor as an ice cream / coffee shop. Is that correct?
Correct, that is correct.
Wonderful. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this particular property is located within the Fells Point Historic District and the regulated floodplain, in addition to the Chesapeake Bay Critical Area. For that reason, there are specific conditions which the Planning Department is recommending to go with approval of this application. The department recommends that approval of the application be subject to the condition that all exterior improvements, additions, alterations, and/or signage are completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation, in accordance with building plans approved by the Planning Department as compliant with floodplain regulations of the City of Baltimore, and in accordance with approval given by the Chesapeake Bay Critical Area Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wrench.
I briefly explain what the recommendations are, the requirements, and she's fine with that.
Okay, and that presupposes my next question. Having heard the conditions of the Planning Department, do you agree and accept those conditions?
Δεν τις έχει ακούσει, λέει, ακόμα τι πρέπει να κάνεις, αλλά πρέπει να πας σύμφωνα με αυτά που αυτοί θα εγκρίνουν. Έχεις κανένα πρόβλημα να συμμορφωθείς με αυτά που σου ζητάνε? No problem, she will agree to those terms.
Very well. Then the board, having heard your appeal, believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you very much.
Σε εγκρίνουν και θα σου δώσουν την άδεια.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your day. We will turn to our regular docket at this point, although we do have one reconsideration matter, which we will take up first. But let me say, with regard to the regular docket, particularly for those matters for which there is opposition, we will call your case, and the appellant will present his or her case. Then the opposition, without duplication, will have an opportunity to present its side. And please be mindful that we would not, we're well able to take in what it is you have to present. And so to the extent we can limit the repetition, that will help the proceedings move along. And you might even want to identify ahead of time if multiple folks want to speak on the same issue, to designate someone to speak on that issue. We can certainly take into account that there are many people who feel that way. As you see, we are still with 3 board members. We do not have the 4th board member yet. We do still anticipate that person showing up at any time. However, because we do have 3 board members, the decision of the board will need to be unanimous. There cannot be two on one side, one on the other. That will ultimately result in a no. So in order to go forward, all parties of the matter must agree to go forward with the 3 board members. As I mentioned, there were no postponements on the docket, but if anyone who is about to go forward with their matter would request the postponement because of the 3 board member rule that we have in place, please state that now so that we can take that up and determine whether or not your matter will be able to go forward today. That having been said, because I don't know at this point when the 4th board member will arrive, and that will change the dynamic of that rule. So as we sit here, we have 3 board members. If there is any party, any appellant, or anyone in opposition to a matter who is seeking a postponement because there are only 3 board members, which requires unanimous consent, please stand and identify your case number, and we can take that issue up. All right. Step forward, Mr. Prettle.
Afternoon.
How are you, sir?
Well, here for 3427 Hickory, and I think because of the 3 board members, we'd like to request a postponement to present for a fuller board.
Okay, that's case number 2019-214, 3427 Hickory Avenue, Nate Prettle, to construct new 3-story building with 3 dwelling units.
That's
correct,
correct.
Sir? Okay, and you're requesting a postponement at this time? I do understand that, sir. Actually, could you come forward if you wouldn't mind?
What's your name, sir?
Wayne Gioso.
Mr. Gioso, unfortunately, this is something we had not anticipated, having less than 4 board members, frankly. We anticipated 4, but now we have 3. The rules that have been put into place across the board, when there are 3 board members, because of the limited number, is we must have a unanimous ruling. And it's unfortunately, I recognize you've probably been here before, and certainly you as well, Mr. Prettle. Okay. Well, we need to have both parties agreeing to go forward in order to go before 3 board members. That's they are. Mr. Prettle's indicated he's not prepared to do that, or would prefer a fuller board, and we have to respect that request. And so we are going to necessarily postpone the matter, okay?
When will I be notified? I wasn't even notified of this hearing. I had to go, and then we saw a sign where it changed. Is there any way that I can be notified at the next hearing?
Well, I think, go ahead, Mr.
Yep.
Beauregard.
If you're signed in on the sign-in sheet, whenever the case is rescheduled, we will call you at that phone number.
Are you signed in, sir?
Yes.
Okay, very well.
What number's there? Because I had myself.
Wait, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the very top one.
Okay.
1 second, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Sir, you had your hand raised?
Mr. Chairman, so how many people are normally on the board?
5.
5, okay.
Yes, sir. 5, we can go down to 4, and it still does not require unanimous consent. However, when we get to 3, everyone must agree, and that's the ruling that the parties are stuck with. Yes, ma'am.
I'm here also as well. I'll come up.
Please do. If you can identify your case number or address?
It's 2 of them. It's 3344 Mondawmin Avenue and also 3312 Dorothy Ave.
Okay, so we're looking at case numbers 2019-225 and 3313 Dorothy Road. Are you Christina Thompson?
I am.
Okay, and that was a request to increase from 2 dwelling units to 3 dwelling units. And we also have case number 2019-226, 3344 Mondawmin Avenue. Ms. Thompson, to increase from 2 dwelling units to 3 dwelling units.
Yes.
Okay, and you are requesting a postponement today?
Yes, if I'm going to be affected by the
You could be affected positively or negatively.
well, that's true too, but either way, I know that you need the whole gamut to move forward, so.
Well, we don't need the whole gamut to move forward. You can move forward with 3, but your decision must be unanimous as to the 3. If we have more than that, you can have a dichotomy. You can have 4 and 1, 3 and 2 if we had 5, but we won't have 5 today. Most we'll have is 4.
Okay.
Do we have opposition to this case?
There is no one signed in opposition to 225 or 226.
Okay. All right. Choice is yours, ma'am.
Well, if we,
Sir, hold on. Is it in connection with this case that we're speaking about? No, sir.
3312 is,
3313 Dorothy Road, right?
it's 30,
You're here for the opposition?
No, sir, I'm not trying opposition where she has filed.
Step forward, step forward. Your name, sir?
Okay, my name is Charles King. Apparently my mother has passed, and let me show you.
Hold
inquiring
on. We're not going to get into the,
that's not my property.
I don't want to get into the merits. What property are you here about?
I'm here about 3314. I understood that y'all had a meeting, but I didn't know what address. It said Dorothy Road.
Sir,
I just don't want to make it understand, make it's not a mistake, typo mistake.
Okay, we are here
Yes, ma'am, right,
speaking right now about 3313 Dorothy Road,
okay,
okay?
thank you.
Very well, thank you. I don't know.
Okay,
So we,
I don't want to postpone if it sounds like there's no opposition, so I'll wait to hear my case then, because I've taken off
Very
from
well.
work. Thank you.
very well. Anyone else would like to pursue a postponement under the 3-commissioner rule? Okay, that having been stated, there are no more indications. We're going to proceed with the docket. And I don't know if I did speak about appellant, opposition, appellant. That will end the hearing. There will be no rebuttal, surreplies, none of that. We have to end it at some point. So let's call the next case. This case is reconsideration. Case number 2019-192, 744 Dolphin Street. do that? Right. You know what? Come forward. I'm sorry, your name again, sir?
Austin Carroll.
Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll, unfortunately, it looks like you're going to be impacted by this 3-board member rule as well. We need at least 3 board members to proceed. We only have 3 present, and Mr. Bonaventure was not present to hear the original appeal, so he cannot consider the reconsideration. That leaves us with 2, which leaves us unable to discuss and render a decision on your reconsideration. We will have to place that on the next.
So I can briefly add that for a case reviewed under reconsideration, the board does that in-house and in the public view, but off the record. So we can certainly keep it on today's agenda. If our 4th board member arrives before we conclude this hearing, the board can then take it up at that time. There's no input on reconsideration from the public generally anyway. So we can still possibly consider it today if that 4th board member arrives in time. And then you can call the office tomorrow morning to get the result of that review. And if not, then we can certainly put it back on the board's agenda for August 16th.
Sure, and I think probably in fairness to you, we could probably make a call to you to let you know what we have done at the end of the
Sure.
proceeding.
Yeah, just to add, we are on really tight timelines here,
Understood.
so
Understood.
spoke about that a couple
I
times.
apologize for that inconvenience. I think our hands are tied with regard to that. So
Sure.
we will see if we can take it up before we conclude our proceedings today.
Cool, awesome.
Thank
All
you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
I'm just making sure we're on the first, I know where we were.
Okay, we're now on the regular docket, and we will proceed with our caseload. First case, 2018-296, 2701 Boston Street, Joseph Woolman. Good afternoon,
Good
Mr.
afternoon,
Woolman.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. As it were, thank you. And we have the purpose of this appeal to add live entertainment to existing restaurant located in portion known as 2723 Lighthouse Point East. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Excellent. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is located in the Canton Waterfront Urban Renewal Plan area and the Lighthouse Point Planned Unit Development. The Urban Renewal Plan does not create any restrictions on the proposed use. However, the planned unit development contains a specific provision contained in Ordinance Number 572, dated June 15th of 1995, that restricts all live entertainment to indoor areas within structures approved as part of the planned unit development. The floor plan that was included with this application should be revised accordingly to show where the live entertainment would be situated within the facility known as the Button Restaurant. The department recommends that approval of this application be subject to these conditions, in addition to any conditions which the board may establish. First, all live entertainment must be contained or occur entirely within the approved existing structure on the property, now known as the Button Restaurant, in an area designated on the approved floor plan for that purpose. Second, a copy of use and occupancy permit for the premises must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. Third, a copy of the written approval by the board of the live entertainment provided on the premises, including details of any restrictions or limitations on the live entertainment provided, must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. And finally, a copy of all other permits and licenses required pursuant to the written approval of the board must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, we have a letter in support in the file from the Canton Community Association, as well as a signed memorandum of understanding between several parties, which Mr. Woolman can go into detail regarding.
Very well. Mr. Woolman, having heard the conditions set forth by planning, are those conditions acceptable to your client?
They are, with one caveat, which I can explain during the presentation of our case, if I may.
Very well. Well, let's hear your matter, sir.
Thank you very much. Standing to my right is Mr. Seth Pikert. Is that right? I always say Peter or Pikert. Pikert first time. Okay, good. Seth Pikert, who's from Warhorse Cities LLC, and is also a member of the LLC that owns the property. This is part of the Lighthouse Point PUD, which was a PUD ordinance passed, I believe, in the early 90s. Back at one point, there was a high-rise tower proposed for the parking lot on this site. It contains several businesses, a strip retail center, a condo apartment complex known as the Beacon. It's adjacent to the moorings, townhouses, which some of you may be familiar with. There is a swim complex, which was recently refurbished and rehabilitated by my client, and there's a restaurant adjacent to the swim club on the location. All of these, with the exception of the moorings, are part of the PUD. There's also Tendeco Wharf directly to the east, which is not part of the PUD. I'm pleased to report that my clients and the operator of the restaurant, who unfortunately could not be here today, conducted extensive community outreach, met with leaders of not only the Canton Community Association, who issued the support letter, but also leadership from the moorings, from the Beacon, from Tendeco Wharf, and other community leaders. We were able to reach an agreement regarding the outdoor as well as indoor live entertainment. I'll get to that in a second. The memorandum of understanding, which I have previously submitted, I do have another copy for the record, which I'll submit at this time.
Wonderful, thank you.
Details the location and hours of this live entertainment. The reason for the planning department's recommendation, and I spoke with Mr. French last week about this, and I'm aware of the planning department's position, is there is a PUD that's still in existence, and in the very last sentence of that ordinance from the early 90s indicates that no live entertainment outdoors may be permitted anywhere within the PUD. We've met with Councilman Zeke Cohen from the 1st District, who represents the property, the district that the property is in, along with leaders from the community. We had a conference call with his chief of staff just last week, and we will be introducing an amendment to that PUD ordinance. Given the city council's summer schedule, that won't be introduced until late August. So understand why planning at this juncture has to make the recommendation that they're making, because that PUD technically is still in existence. I would ask that the board consider adding a condition to its approval that the PUD needs to be amended as well. I spoke to Mr. French, and I can't remember whether I spoke to Mr. Baumgartner or not. We may have played phone tag, but we decided it was best to proceed today since we do have the MOU in hand. Everyone is in support of this. Ironically, the planning department has been issuing temporary permits for the live entertainment that's been ongoing, and it's been very well received by the community and the public. Everyone is really happy with the Raw and Refined restaurant, which recently opened at the beginning of the season. People are real happy with the outdoor entertainment that's being provided, and there's been no issues. So we don't foresee any issues with the PUD being amended as well. I also have copies of a site plan which highlights and indicates both where we are within the PUD, and then on the other side of each sheet indicates the areas where the live entertainment is proposed. These are the areas that was agreed upon with the community leaders who we actually conducted a site visit with the community leadership. They were able to walk the site and walk the swim club, et cetera, and are aware of where the live entertainment is. You'll notice it's actually facing in closer to the water side as opposed to the community side, although there's a large parking lot there as well, and we're somewhat removed from a lot of the residential properties in the area. Probably the closest residential properties are in Tendeco Wharf, and there is an existing restaurant adjacent to their property, which also has live entertainment. So we're kind of staying consistent with what's being offered down there by some other establishments that are similar to ours. So with that and the memorandum of understanding, I'll finally just submit a memorandum of law regarding conditional use. I know the board is very familiar with those standards. I believe we've met those standards under the code, and unless you have any questions for us, I'll submit it this time.
Mr. Woolman, would you like that MOU incorporated into any approval?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We're certainly happy to have the conditions and restrictions contained in the MOU made part of the record and part of the BMZA's approval should you decide to grant us one.
Very well.
I just have a quick question. It might be in the MOU. I haven't looked at that yet, but it says in the application itself, it says that the hours of operation for live entertainment, you have Monday through Friday, but then the second line says it's just Thursday through Sunday. So is the live entertainment Monday the entire week or just Thursday through Sunday?
I think at this time, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Piker, it's Thursday through Sunday at this juncture, but I think we wanted to have the flexibility to possibly offer it at other times. But at this time, it's...
He hasn't been sworn, so he can't answer any questions.
You know what? Swear him. Sorry about that.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Spell your last name.
P-E-I-C-H-E-R-T.
Thank you.
What I just said.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And there's no, beyond the days in which the live entertainment will take place, it indicates no matter what day, it'll be ending by 10 p.m.?
I believe that's the latest it goes, yes.
Okay. Question for Mr. Baumgartner. Given the issue on the PUD, and I guess it's necessary amendment, are we able to grant a temporary grant approval, I guess, with the condition that the PUD is amended to allow the live entertainment?
Yes, just like any other bill that could amend a PUD or rezone a property, the bill can, the board can approve on the condition precedent that the PUD is amended prior to any use and occupancy permit being issued to authorize something like live entertainment.
Very well, thank you. Any further questions from the board? Nope. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you
for your
very much.
presentation. Calling the next case, 2019-171, 5006 Bel Air Road, Oseti Adetunji Idowu, to use the premises as offices. Hold on, we're gonna swear the parties.
Raise your hands, please. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, first we have a letter from the Waltherson Improvement Association dated July 26, 2019. We have received notice about the intent to change the zoning of 5006 Bel Air Road to office space. At this time, we are opposing this request due to a variety of factors. Firstly, the information we have received is incomplete. The petitioner states that there will be psychiatric rehabilitation services, but it is unclear how these services will be provided and the extent to which the services will be supported through the Bel Air Road location. Secondly, the request for development does not include the entire dwelling. Therefore, it is unclear how the rest of the building will be used. Although we are opposing this petition, we would like to invite the petitioner to a community meeting so that we can gather more information about the request. A more detailed description of the intended use for this location may affect our decision. The petitioner may also write us a letter in the above address should they have more information that they would like to share about the proposed development. Thank you. We also have a letter from Harbell, basically saying the same thing, also indicating that the Sidonia Community Association is part of this and they would like more information or postpone the request.
I don't know who need,
Wait, hold on.
Pardon me.
Mr. French?
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this particular
Tell him there, please.
Okay. Hang on for a second, Mr. French. I kind of see where this is going, which is what Mr. Renner just mentioned. Are you seeking a postponement, ma'am, given the request for additional
I hear him
information?
telling you. I thought that should be my decision too, because I can either make the building an office or residential.
Okay.
I know.
You've heard at least the communication in the letters that the folks in the neighborhood want more information from you.
I would love to postpone to talk to them.
Okay.
So we talked outside.
Yes, sir.
And I apologize. What I was trying to do is indicate to the chairman that
Yeah.
we didn't need to go through a number of things if you were going to request a postponement today.
Fair enough.
I've talked to her. I'll put her in touch with the Waltherson Improvement Association. She could sit down, hopefully with their board of directors. There should be, the letter I wrote is incorrect. Sidonia is not involved in this. And I sent a corrected copy, but it was late yesterday, so I understand the staff didn't pick it up. And I'll put them in touch with them. Hopefully they'll meet with them, and then by the next time the hearing's called, potentially there'll be agreement and there won't be any objections on behalf of the community association.
Very well. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Ma'am, your postponement is granted. We'll put you on the next docket and give you the notice. Well, you'll get notice when the case is reset.
Okay.
So, ma'am, when that discussion happens, or it does not happen, however that works, you will need to call our office, and we will reissue a posting notice for this property, and the property will have to be reposted. So at your discretion, at your convenience, just contact our office so we can put you back on the schedule whenever that is, that you would like to get back on the docket, okay?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't see 213. 213? Don't have that in. Calling the next case is 2019-213, 728 South Conkling Street. Alicio Cardillo.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of Alessio Cardillo and the Cardillo family.
All right, and this is a request to construct first and second floor rear additions. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I guess for the record, my name is Chung Yi. Last name is Y-I, and I'm the general contractor.
Want to raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. Sir, could you tell us about your project?
We're actually, the clients would actually like to have an addition put off the back of the home for their growing family, and also to add a parking pad to the back to alleviate any of the parking on the front street. Also, we do have a letter here with 18 signatures that are the neighbors that I'm going to submit to for the record.
Very well.
That are in support of the project, and that is all the neighbors that actually have a line of sight of the project.
Okay. Construct first and second floor addition. And Mr. Baumgartner, we do not have any posting issue with regard to this particular appeal?
That's correct. There was a posting issue with the prior date, but the property was properly posted and, yes.
All right, very well. Any questions from the board? Very well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. 2019-214 was postponed. Going to move on to 2019-225, 3313 Dorothy Road. It's Christina Thompson. I'm going to call also case number 2019-226, 3344 Mondawmin Avenue, also Ms. Thompson. Okay? Swear the witness.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, that's true.
And let's start with 219-225, 3313 Dorothy Road, to increase from 2 dwelling units to 3 dwelling units. Do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department prepared a review of a property known as 3312 Dorothy Road, which was based upon the application filed by Christina Thompson. And it uses the address 3312 Dorothy Road. Therefore, the department is not prepared to comment today on 3313 Dorothy Road.
It's 3312.
And let's hold on a sec, folks. There was simply a clerical error in creating the docket. The property is correctly listed as 3313 Dorothy Road. The second property is 33, I'm sorry, wait.
No, it should be
3344.
3312.
3312 Dorothy and 3344 Mondawmin Avenue. So it was a transcription error, not a substantive error.
So are we commenting on 3312 or 3313?
33.
Which one is going forward?
Let's
Okay.
move forward with 3312 if you
On
have
3312, thank
staff
you.
reports. Thank you.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is currently authorized or was last authorized for use as a multifamily dwelling with 2 dwelling units. The applicant is proposing to add a 3rd dwelling unit by converting the basement to an additional dwelling unit. In this zoning district, which is the R6 district, multifamily dwellings require 1,500 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. This particular property only encloses 2,200 square feet and therefore does not even have the minimum lot area required for 2 dwelling units. The department considers the variance required, 59%, to be excessive and therefore is recommending disapproval of the application because the amount and proportion of lot area variance needed for approval is excessive in relation to the amount required by the zoning code for addition of the proposed 3rd dwelling unit. Thank you.
Before we proceed, Mr. Baumgartner, we had a gentleman approach previously with regard to this property. I believe he was seeking platform with regard to 3312?
He was talking about 3314.
14.
It's the property right next door that is vacant, and it seems like he's trying to get access to it, but it's,
Okay.
that's
My
something
mistake.
totally separate.
All right.
Yeah,
Very well. Thank you. Apologies.
it's okay.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Having heard from planning, can you tell us about your project with specific reference to the commentary from the planning department?
Well, I mean, I understand what they were asking of, but as of right now, the basement has an egress route, and I was prepared to create a second one. I understand what they were saying about the square footage. However, my understanding was per building level that it's 764 square feet, so that's what the basement entails. And I was going to make a replica, ultimately, of what was kind of already in place on the first and the second floor. So I just wanted to see if there was anything that could be done, or if there were any recommendations that could be put forward in order for me to make that happen, to try to turn it into just another either an efficiency or a one-bedroom in the basement.
Okay. Mr. Baumgartner, I understand from the presentation, or at least the materials in the application, this is seeking like an 89% variance?
So we have it from the perspective of a lot area. We have 41, but that might be off a little bit. So essentially, in this zoning district, per dwelling unit would require 1,500 square feet per dwelling unit, and that's lot area, not floor area. The existing lot area is 2,200 square feet. So if you were going from one family to two family, that would require a variance.
Okay.
This is going from two family to three family, which doubles that variance. So the percentage on our staff report, I think, is a little bit off, but the square footage requirement per dwelling unit is correct. So it'd be 1,500 square feet per dwelling unit. There's a strange provision in the zoning code that if you meet half the requirement, you meet all the requirement for 3 or above. So that third dwelling unit gets the benefit of a 750 square foot bump up, which makes the variance a little bit less, but it's still about twice the maximum for that lot area.
And the space in the basement, which you're seeking to make a new dwelling unit, is how much? What's the square footage of that space?
I believe it's 764.
So that would be approximately half of the requirement.
All right. Any questions from the board? Nope. Anything you'd like to add on that property?
No, there's ample parking, because I know that typically seems to come up, but there's plenty of off-street parking surrounding, and then I also have a parking pad in the back that could accommodate 2 vehicles in itself back in the backyard.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to turn our attention at this point to case number 2019-226, 3344 Mondawmin Avenue.
Okay.
Do we have any staff reports for that property?
Yes.
Sorry, hold on. That's also to increase 2 dwelling units to 3 dwelling units. Staff reports?
Yes. Again, Planning Department reviewed this application. The conclusion and the cause are basically the same as what you just heard. This particular property does not have lot area to meet the minimum requirement for 2 dwelling units that are already in it. The same criteria apply, 1,500 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. This particular lot has 2,565 square feet and thus does not even provide the 3,000 square feet required for the 2 dwelling units that are already in the building. The amount of variance, although not as large as the case you just heard, is still, in the opinion of the Planning Department, excessive. And the department therefore recommends disapproval of the application because the amount and proportion of lot area variance needed for approval is excessive in relation to the amount required by the zoning code for addition of the proposed 3rd dwelling unit. Thank you.
Okay. If I may? Yes, sir.
Okay, we do have a letter from the Hanlon Improvement Association dated July 20th indicating that the owner has met with their executive board and they see no detrimental impact on the community and support the request.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, can you tell me about that project?
Pretty much same as the other one. There is ample space, and the blessing of this unit is there's already 2 egress routes, and the windows that are large enough so that someone could get out in the event that there's an emergency. This apartment is actually 868 square feet, and for this dwelling, so again, looking to either make it an efficiency or a one-bedroom apartment. So that's all I'm looking to do. And again, with the parking, there's ample off-street parking as well.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that'll be all, because he already read my letter, because I did meet with the Hanlon Association, and they supported as well. So
Very
that's
well.
all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, ma'am.
All right,
Good luck
thank
to
you.
you. Yes, ma'am. Calling the next case, 2019-227, 2718 Beryl Avenue. Mr. Herbert Burgunder. This is to continue use as 2 dwelling units, correct, sir?
Yes.
All right. Swear the parties?
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
What's your name real quick?
Benjamin Wazana on behalf of the owner.
Okay, Benjamin?
Wazana, O-U-A-Z-A-N-A.
O-U-A.
Z-A-N-A.
Okay, do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department does not have a comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Burgunder.
Yes, thank you. If I could proceed by way of a bit of a proffer, if you have questions for Mr. Wazana, he certainly is here to answer questions. This property is a longstanding 2-unit dwelling, 2718 Beryl Avenue. It's in the R7 district. And by way of the proffer, I have a packet of information that I will refer to if I could have 4 copies.
Great.
Hit the microphone. There we go.
Thank you.
And so the packet includes the SDAT, State Department of Assessments and Taxation printout of the property, a street view, a photograph of the property, as well as there's ample evidence of the use of the property as 2 units. So there are 2 mailboxes in the second photograph. Each of the apartment doors, apartment 1 and apartment 2, have numbers on them. They were not put there recently. You can tell by the age of the door. The kitchens, as well, there are 2 kitchens in the property and 2 bathrooms, 1 on each floor. You can see the picture with the number 2 on it, going a stairwell up to the second unit, with the second kitchen having a black stove. There are 2 meters for electric, as well as Baltimore City View system shows the property listed as 2. It says DHCD number of dwelling 2. So there is a record of the use of it as 2 units, plus the floor plans that my client has submitted with the application. We'd ask that all of that be entered into evidence.
Very well.
And this is, as is evident by the pictures, this is a non-conforming structure in that the use of the property is permitted as of right as multifamily in the R7 district, but the lot is too small to accommodate the 2 units, and therefore it's a non-conforming structure. There's a little bit of a trickiness in the law on it. There were some provisions in the old zoning code. Most of us are old enough to remember the use of the old zoning code, but those provisions do not apply. There is a provision in the non-conforming structure section related to in 18401 that relates to uses of, non-conforming structures losing a dwelling unit if it's 4 or more dwelling units. But that provision in 18412 does not apply to the property at issue, because the property issue is only 2 dwelling units. And I have actually a memorandum of law on that issue. I have 4 copies of that, in case there was any question about the use of the property. But if you take a look at 18412, it applies to 4 or more dwelling units, which does not apply in this case. And those 2 provisions for where there would be a sunset provision related to related to a property that had 4 or more dwelling units, those sunset provisions, the penalty of which is to lose a unit, do not apply. And there's actually a case, shockingly, on this, Harris versus Mayor and City Council of Baltimore. It's from 1977, and actually goes a long way toward explaining how the law came about. The brief story of it is that in the 1960s, Baltimore City decided by ordinance that properties that were converted to 4 or more dwelling units were a bit of a scourge on the neighborhood, and they caused maleffects by having too many people living in the city, which is a little bit ironic because now we want more people to live in the city. But in those days, they passed what was called a rollback provision, and the rollback provision applied to 4 or more dwelling units, and that rollback provision is still part of the law in the current zoning code. So when it was passed in 1971, they included the rollback provision, and the case, Harris versus Mayor and City Council of Baltimore, very clearly says that buildings which contain 3 or fewer dwelling units were likewise exempt. So that provision of the law, which was effectively the rollback provision, does not apply to buildings that are less than 4 dwelling units. And so we believe that the grandfathered use would prevail, and that there's nothing in the zoning code that would undo that.
Very well. Is there anything else you'd like to present?
Is there any other questions?
Questions from the board?
No.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Burgundy,
Thank
for your
you.
presentation.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, sir. All right. Okay, calling the next cases. We'll call these cases all at one time. Case number 2019-229, 1100 North Warwick Avenue. Mr. Steve Tiedemann, to use as residential treatment facility with medical treatment offices. In fact, each of these properties are for that purpose. 2019-230, 2503 Winchester Street. 2019-231, 2505 Winchester Street. And 2019-232, 1111 Whitmore Avenue, all to use as residential treatment facility with medical treatment offices. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir, that's accurate.
Oh.
I am.
Yeah, I think I started that. So again, we have cases 229, 230, 231, and 232.
Yes. Are you opposition group? You might want to stand up here.
Opposition's going to be to my right.
The applicant's position may not require everybody to have a say today.
Understood.
So, not because I'm trying to make you quiet, sir, just because. No, I understand you have children.
Okay,
Everybody
okay.
has children.
Please, the record is proceeding right now, so we need to be quiet.
And just before we get started, again, I'm going to ask the sizable opposition to be mindful of the request that we not be repetitive with regard to the opposition points. But with that said, we're going to swear the witnesses.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not testifying, but I can bring up somebody that you may need if you need testimony.
Okay, well, to the extent that may be possible, I would like
I'm
that
sorry.
witness sworn. That's all right.
Although I don't think we need to offer testimony.
Okay.
But
Well, raise your.
There may be a question or two that.
I'm a lawyer, yeah.
You know what, could you swear
Where's
this
Kim?
witness?
Where'd she go? Oh, there she is.
Do you
Sorry.
swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. With regard to each of these properties, 1100 North Warwick, 2503 Winchester Street, 2505 Winchester Street, 1111 Whitmore Avenue, I'll ask for staff reports if we have any for each of those properties or if it's collective, however it's best for staff to proceed.
They are very fortunately collective.
Wonderful. Can I have those staff reports, please?
Okay. We have a letter from the La Bru Improvement Association, the Evergreen Association, the Matthew A. Henson Neighborhood Association, Matthew Henson Community Development Corporation, and Easterwood. I believe that is the name of an association. In effect, they write that we have the Turk House, the new Winchester Treatment Clinic on Poplar Grove, the Stabilization Center on Dukeland Street. We say to another treatment center in our community, especially across from our kids. We don't know the issues that the 188 clients have, mental illness, criminal backgrounds. We do not need another treatment center in the community. Addiction is in Pikesville also, and it is quietly kept. Put the treatment center in your community, not ours. We have enough problems. We need a decent food market, not another treatment center. Your own communities told you so, told you no. This community said no, we do not want the treatment center from those associations. And we have a letter from the department, Baltimore City Public Schools. They write, in their capacity as Chief of Staff, Allison Perkins Cohen of the Baltimore City Public Schools, to express concern about the proposed zoning variance that would allow the use of the properties described below as a residential treatment facility with medical and treatment offices. City Schools has concerns about the proposed development of the 4 lots as a residential treatment facility with medical and treatment offices serving approximately 188 residents. While City Schools fully understand the benefits of a recovery and treatment center as a public health need, the location of these lots in close proximity to two schools, this development could adversely affect those schools and possibly create safety challenges for our students who would have to walk past the site going to and from school or to wait for the MTA buses. In summary, City Schools does not believe that the proposed development is an appropriate use considering the location of 2 elementary schools. Baltimore City Public Schools therefore urges the Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals to deny the request for conditional and variance to change the lots to a community treatment center with medical and treatment offices. That's my end.
Planning Department reviewed these 4 applications, and the comments of the department are essentially identical. The 4 applications were grouped, and the application that was used for each address states that there would be 3 medical and treatment offices that serve only residents of the residential care facility. It wasn't clear from the application whether this would be created by conversion of 3 dwelling units to office space or whether there were already non-residential spaces within 1 or more of these buildings, but the application did not describe which of the buildings, the 4 buildings in question, would have these medical and treatment offices. The application describes a maximum of 4 persons per 2-bedroom dwelling unit. The buildings are garden apartments and therefore are readily convertible for that type of purpose. The application states it would prohibit residents from leaving the property or from having cars. And for security, they would have 24-hour security installed with staff around the clock and installation of an attractive perimeter fence. The nature of the 24-hour security is not described in the application. The preliminary site plan included with the application does not indicate whether the perimeter fence would surround all 4 garden apartment structures, nor whether its height would necessitate a variance of height limits for fences at the front or street corner side of each lot, nor whether it would be acceptable under terms of the Fire and Safety Code. The application also does not indicate whether there would be visitors who could need to be accommodated with some type of appropriate off-street parking. More specifically, the department focused upon the standards for approval of a conditional use and notes within the zoning code this provision contained at section 5-406A. As a further guide to its decision on the facts of each case, the board must consider the following where appropriate. Number 2, the resulting traffic patterns and adequacy of proposed off-street parking and loading. And number 4, the proximity of dwellings, churches, schools, public structures, and other places of public gathering. Section 5-406B. The proposed site is composed of 4 adjoining lots, which are improved, covering the entire south side of Winchester Street from Warwick Avenue westward to Whitmore Avenue. Opposite 1110 North Warwick Avenue is James Mosher Elementary School for grades pre-kindergarten through 2 with a capacity of 405 students. Opposite 1111 Whitmore Avenue is Calverton Elementary Middle School for grades 3 through 8 with a capacity of 899 students. Both of these schools are being modernized as part of the 21st Century Schools Initiative, an initiative here represented by an investment of approximately $79 million in these 2 schools alone. In addition, the James Mosher Baseball Little League field is on the grounds of the James Mosher Elementary School, directly across the street from the property known as 1110 North Warwick Avenue. This creates a unique concentration of public school activities, attended by a similarly unique geographic concentration of students ages 4 to 14 and outdoor recreational activity, with which the proposed geographic concentration of adults seeking treatment for addiction would be singularly incompatible. Although the application states that a fence would be built around unspecified parts of the site comprised of these 4 separate properties, and that adults housed at this site would be prohibited from leaving the premises or from having cars with which to come and go from the site on their own, there is no indication in the application of how these physical or operational constraints would actually be made to succeed in keeping the residents of the proposed facility from interacting with school-aged children passing to and from each of these schools. There is also no indication of how the operator of the proposed residential treatment facility would prevent or discourage interactions of residents of the facility with adult persons outside the facility, such as through the fence encounters. Because this site and its proposed use are next to 2 public schools and their educational and community-oriented uses, the establishment and operation of the proposed use at this location would be detrimental to public welfare as represented by the schools, their faculty and students, in a manner that is not found in other parts of the R6 zoning district, which contains these properties. As noted previously, the site plan does not indicate whether any off-street parking would be proposed. There is also no indication of where loading of supplies and removal of trash and things of that nature would be accomplished. There is also no indication in the application of the number of staff who would be required for this facility. The amount of off-street parking required for a residential facility is 1 parking space per 4 employees on peak shift. The amount of off-street parking required for offices is 1 parking space per 800 square feet of gross floor area. The application does not provide sufficient information to allow a determination of the parking requirement associated with the proposed use. The board may grant a variance based upon unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty, and the current use of the property does not include off-street parking. However, there is no site plan included with this application that would demonstrate that the applicant would not be able to provide off-street parking spaces on the property. For these reasons, the Department of Planning is recommending disapproval of the application because the unique combination of 2 public schools, 1 at each end geographically of the site of which this property would be a part, with a combined enrollment of approximately 1,300 students ages 4 through 14, and related community uses of the school sites makes the proposed use in close proximity to public schools and places of public gathering at this specific location not approvable in accordance with the approval standards for conditional uses specified in subsection 5-406 of the zoning code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can bring to the board's attention that this case is here as a conditional use for a residential care facility. The zoning code defines residential care facility as means a group care or similar facility for the 24-hour medical or non-medical care of individuals in need of personal services, supervision, or assistance essential to sustain activities of daily living or to protect the individual. So that is the definition of residential care facility that is before the board today. I would remind the board that it is the zoning code as well as federal and state law do not permit the city to distinguish between the type of medical service provided, whether it is dentistry or orthodontics or substance abuse treatment. They're all considered under the same rubric. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Very well, thank you. Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes, sir. First of all, Your Honor, to the board, some sort of an olive branch here. I mean, this is it's a great country that we live in. Democracy in action. This is beautiful. I commend each of you for showing up today, standing up for your rights and what you think And what you do have as rights, I didn't mean to offend you, sir. I saw the eyes. I'm not saying you think you are. What I'm saying is it's a beautiful country that we live in, despite all the stuff. And Mr. Baumgartner talked earlier about some of the stuff that's going on in Washington.
Sure.
I didn't want to go out into the hall and talk with 30 people because I didn't think we could all get on the same page in 15 minutes. So I wasn't trying to shut the board down that we're not willing to talk. You know, I've read through the planning board's or planning department's decision or recommendation, and I understand that all these people are here to oppose it. I can tell you that we don't want to be anybody's enemy. We're a nonprofit. Nobody here on this end of the table is getting wealthy doing this. Nobody takes home a big dividend check from all of these things. And I will say that although I know you all do have children in the neighborhood, all of our residents are somebody's children, most of them children of Baltimore who came up through the same school system, who are now hooked up into this nightmare that everybody, not just Baltimore, across our country are caught up in. We at Power are trying to do the best that we can to provide housing, not on an outpatient basis where they come and go. This particular plan was for residential treatment facility with a fence all the way around at 6 to 8 foot tall, and that would require its own zoning variance, and was not part of this application because frankly we wanted to get it through. In fact, there were those that recommended that we didn't need a zoning recommendation here because if we provided the medical treatment off-site, we were just having people live forward to a house, you know, just like you would automatically have there. Our position, our management team's decision was no, we wanted to post the property. We wanted an opportunity to see who would speak out against us because if we're going to go into a neighborhood, we don't want to be anybody's enemy. Our staff has been shot at since going there with paintball guns during the day, and we've had other problems from the neighborhood. And so it's been made pretty clear that for some reason we're not welcome. I can tell you that the other providers that you mentioned, I don't have any personal experience working for them, but I do know that there are reputable and unreputable providers. POW has been a reputable provider for decades now. Our goal here is to not pick a fight with anybody or any neighborhood association. We appreciate all of you coming out. Obviously, our position was that we thought that this was a good opportunity to have a closed-in environment where our people could stay, receive treatment 24 hours a day. To answer some of the initial questions, although you know I don't want to be too vehemently opposing the opposition, we would have a 24-hour a day floor monitor on each floor of the property, as well as a manager upgrading the video surveillance, as well as having patrols. Our unit block of Broadway is probably one of the safest blocks in the city because we have nearly around-the-clock what we call our block staff, which is a security / eyes on the street staff. But again, we don't want to go somewhere where we're not necessarily wanted. I will ask everybody here to commit and to understand that these people got to go somewhere. I understand you don't want them in your neighborhood, but there's.
I'm sorry.
Well,
Can I just interrupt your?
Speak to me.
Sure.
Oh, no. Let me just interrupt for 1 second. I'm sorry. I know tensions are high, and I know that everyone is here to express, you know, their either opposition or pro what's going on here. What I would ask is that you control your outward gestures, and I'm just going to speak blanketly and not point to one person in particular. They can be misconstrued. They can be taken as threats. So please just control your outward demeanor as someone is speaking. Thank you.
Well, my neighborhood happens to be the mid-east neighborhood in Baltimore, and so we do have some facilities in that location too. The problem is there's schools everywhere in Baltimore. I mean, in other words, there's very few places that we can go, and believe me, we have a school within 2 or 3 blocks of our Broadway location.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Tiedemann.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us exactly what the treatment facility is going to treat.
Yeah, this is our CEO, and she really can answer the ins and outs of it.
I want to be sure we make a good record here.
Sure.
As to what's that
Right.
issue.
Absolutely. Thank you
Right.
so much. And I thank you guys, as I say to Steve, pardon me, I know I'm supposed to be talking to you. I'm Kim Wireman. We hoped to be able, WIREMAN. We all know there's a terrible fentanyl epidemic in Baltimore. It's not unusual for me to get out of my car in the morning when we pull up to our Broadway location and see someone laying on the sidewalk. They're so heavily asleep that we can't see their chest moving, so we're not sure whether they're dead or whether they're asleep. I'm not kidding you. We have a staff armed with Narcan. We have about 6 people on the street at all times who have Narcan. And just last week, it happened with a gentleman. I went over to see if he was alive, and we signaled for Narcan. He happened to be alive. We do that with about 5 people a month. People are dying in the alleyways and the sidewalks around in our city. And I want to make that clear. That's where we come from, and I know that's where everyone wants the best for the people who are suffering. I'm not disputing that. So out of this epidemic, we're looking at increasing more residential beds because we feel that's the solution to the problem. People need a 2-year continuum. We treat public health clients. We don't treat private insurance. We treat public health clients, and we're committed to their well-being. We deliver very rapid treatment for 30 days, which would be at another location, not at this Winchester location. We'd envisioned this Winchester location as a facility where those clients who had been in treatment successfully for 30 or 60 days could enter what's called low-intensity residential treatment. Where they would continue their treatment, they would begin immediately working on employment opportunities and on realigning themselves. Many of our clients have never really worked, so they need intensive help in trying to get into the work environment, continue their substance abuse treatment, look at financial treatment and social financial work, because many have never managed money. So a 360 program for about 4 to 6 months in order to give people that next phase that they need in order to be successful. Does that answer your question, sir?
Partly. What are the criteria for an individual? You mentioned these would be folks who would be basically transitioned from
Right. From another facility where that first intensive treatment. That clinical criteria is controlled by an organization called the American Society for Addictions Medicine, which Maryland Medicaid uses. But typically in that transition, a client's been not using for 30 to 60 days, is stable medically, and is advancing in their treatment, i.e. there are no significant behavioral issues or lack of motivation or compliance with treatment. That's very broadly put, sir.
All right. And then the residential stay at the Winchester location would be approximately 4 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. Speak to me if you could, or speak to the board if you could, about the proposed security measures. I understand you have a facility on Broadway.
Absolutely. We have a wonderful IT department who is able to put. We have cameras on our Broadway facility. We have cameras all along the tops and around the facility that we now use. So we have 24-hour monitoring of activity on the sides of our buildings, along the tops of our buildings. The police very often ask us for our tapes if there's something that happens in the neighborhood. So we would install those cameras. To some degree, a lot of that equipment is there. Now, I'm not an IT person, so please know, I know that there is already monitoring equipment there that is fairly up to date. I mean, it's not from 1984. We would go in and analyze it so that we had a 360 monitoring around the facility and inside the facility, probably from the rooftops or higher up. And then we have what we call our block staff. It allows us to get those folks who have successfully completed recovery and then had an interim of successful additional recovery outside of treatment, allows us to get them in the workforce. Frankly, we create jobs, and we create needed jobs at more than minimum wage. And we have about 6 of those folks from 5 a.m. to about 9 a.m. on our block. That costs us about $250,000, $300,000 a year. So we put our money where our mouth is. We would intend to have that same kind of staff at our Winchester facility as we saw fit. I don't know whether it would be 6 or 4, because we intend to have the fence that would enclose the perimeter totally. And we must have house monitors 24 hours a day on a 15-to-1 ratio with the clients there.
So for the 4 to 6 weeks that the people are in the facility?
4 to 6 months, sir.
4 to 6 months, I'm sorry. Are there visitors that come in? Is there traffic back and forth? Is there family?
Yeah, to be very reasonable, it's not the same as an outpatient facility, but we would, there may be visitors, yes. Yeah, there may be, but they would be approaching our facility and entering through our fence.
Okay. Do you have a policy on how often people can have visitors? I'm just curious.
Oh, sure, we have, totally.
The operation is here.
Absolutely, sir. We want our women and men in treatment to be able to see their kids. We think that's very important. So we have child visitation Saturday and Sunday at our current location. And we would hope to envision something like that at Winchester. To be fair, we're not trying to say nobody's ever going to put one little foot in. Those folks are mothers and fathers and kids and brothers and sisters.
So is this a controlled access building, or are clients who stay there, would they be free to come and go?
I'm not sure what you mean by controlled access, so I don't want to say yes, but they would be restricted to being on the property and would receive permission when they went off the property.
Go ahead.
I want to make sure that I'm trying to be very forthcoming.
One of the questions that I have is, are you doing this as you go along to figure out, what the opposition is, so that, okay, then we'll respond to that? Because I'm a little concerned that we don't have a real security plan for this location, or a visitation plan, right, for how that's, whether it's a controlled access building or how that's all going to work, where the staff is going to be, because I think it's fair to want to know, not just that you're going to put the building here or put the facility here and surround it with a fence, but how is that really going to manifest? For example, I don't imagine the residents are required, or don't they have some outside time that they could have? They come
Sure.
outside the building?
Not really. No, they would need to get permission to leave. Yeah, they would have to get permission to leave.
The building, outside, to get fresh air.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course, in the atrium.
Where are
yeah.
they going to be in relation to, do you have a sense as you stand here in your presentation, what that's going to look like? What times of day are they going to be staggered? Where are they going to be allowed to go? Where's your staff going to be in relation to those individuals? Those are the kinds of things that practically are going to necessarily happen. What's that going to look like?
Yeah, sure.
So the plan would have a 6-foot gate for coming and going, and monitor of that gate as to who can come and go.
At one location?
At one location. However, again, and this is not me lecturing anybody, but our clients are not criminals. They may have at one point been involved in the criminal justice system. But one of the reasons why residential treatment works is because it's not incarceration. So, we're not going to have barbed wire on the fence or anything like that to keep somebody from jumping the fence. And we don't pretend to think that we're going to be sending out guard dogs chasing down somebody that decides to abscond. That said, they're not freely allowed to come and go. And they would have to have some sort of permission, like a relative who died, or somebody's in the hospital and they have to go visit them, because obviously their chance of remission goes up. Our plan was not to go piecemeal with this. It was to have essentially a use that was consistent with the current use, except to have it be controlled by us, and have the medical office where they would see their doctor on site.
Was there any thought given the commentary by planning and the issues regarding security, parking, was there any thought given to supplementing your application to respond to those specific issues?
Well, I didn't see that planning letter till today, this morning. So the the parking really should not be a problem. There's going to be 12 to 13 people there 24 hours a day on the whole site that work for us, and there's already some off-street parking that would easily allow those people to park there. Our patients don't need parking. The visitors, honestly, Ms. Wireman is very good about reunification of families. The brutal truth is most of our clients have burned all their bridges, and they don't get a lot of visitors, or have burned many of their bridges, or at least this is an opportunity for them to open up those bridges. So yes.
Have you addressed the city school, since there are two, I guess, elementary, middle schools with over 1,000 students, and you did mention that many of the clients could have contacts with the criminal justice system. How would you ensure, or could you make sure that the clients who stayed in that facility are allowed to stay there if they have any conditions that would prevent them from being in areas near schools?
We already do that. We screen out sexual assaults, arson, what else?
Any sex
and
offender.
any sort of attempted or murder, second degree, first degree murder.
And let me say, we do
or
that
a recent-
voluntarily because we're near Cold Spring Elementary. No one
Right.
tells us to do that. We do that because we're committed to our community.
Yeah, so we do reject people based on their criminal past. But that said, our clients are, involved in the drugs scene, and so they come with some rough edges, not to sugarcoat it.
I guess the question that I still have in my mind is the security aspect of the facility. You have a fence and you say block staff?
We have staff who are trained to interact with the clients and control the clients. We currently have a staffing plan where we have 6 of them in our current facility on duty from 5 in the morning until 9 in the evening.
How many would you have at Winchester?
I'm not sure we would have 6. We would definitely have 4, and we would definitely have them on a 24-hour basis. And I'm sorry that we didn't have all of that mapped out. We run a very successful program now, and maybe we assumed that it would be obvious that we would take care of it.
Absolutely not obvious.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have or envision any armed security at your facility?
We don't currently employ any armed security unless we have an event, and then we hire it on a temporary basis. We've been very, very lucky because we have very good security from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. We don't have a lot of break-ins.
And our staff is all trained in de-escalation and that thing. And to be candid with the board, the state requires that we be accredited. And the accreditation boards require that we have no firearms on site. So once we go hire somebody with armed security, we're actually violating our own accreditation. And more important, right, most of our clients have a negative reaction to the police, and so seeing an armed off-duty police officer is just not conducive to the treatment that they're trying to receive there.
Moreover, we only hire an armed guard to walk our perimeter because of things that happen outside that come in, not
Right.
because of our clients.
Right.
Any further questions of the applicant at this point?
Mr. Tiedemann,
Yes, sir.
a conditional use is presumptively valid in Maryland, meaning that the city council has determined that residential care facilities are presumptively valid in this zoning district. The case law says that that presumption can be rebutted. And Mr. French highlighted that one of those elements, one of those factors that the board has to consider is the proximity of this particular project to schools, churches, et cetera. I'd like you to give us a little bit about the proximity of this site to at least 2 schools, looks like Rosemont and Carver, especially in relation to your other facilities. You had mentioned that at least one of the other facilities was 3 or 4 blocks away from any school, but as we all know, Baltimore's block by block, so 3 or 4 blocks can seem very, very far away, whereas this seems to be in closer proximity. So can you just provide some information about how this site is different
Sure.
from other sites with its
If you
proximity.
look at an aerial view of the site, you'll see that the school that we're close to now down off of Broadway City Springs is actually closer to us than the buildings of the schools that are in the neighborhood. I'll be frank with the community and with the board that when we saw how far away the schools really were from us and we knew we were putting up a 6 to 8 foot fence around it, we weren't all that concerned about our clients interacting with and knowing that they would not be able to come and go. We were not that concerned about it. And again, we have to go somewhere, so that's where we were with that. So I don't know if I answered.
Other locations that do not place you between two elementary schools? In this close proximity?
Well, there are other locations, but not where there is a landlord who wants to take what is a below C-class, not a great apartment complex as far as the landlord's upkeep of it. I'm not saying it's not beautiful location and building, the grass is pretty, et cetera, but you have a landlord who basically is seeing an opportunity for us to come in and actually maintain the property and keep it well, which is what we do, and to see a constant revenue stream coming in from us, not having to collect rent, et cetera. So I think that's attractive. And so finding that sort of a facility in an area where there's not two schools or one school that's right on the border. We were actually looking, the Baltimore City put up for proposals. I can't think of the name of the school right now. It's over 33rd Street where the stadium used to be. But they built a new school and then they shut down an old school, and they're wanting to lease it out to a nonprofit for something, for a neighborhood thing. And so we approached that. The school literally, like, here's the road, and then there's the road, and then there's the school. We didn't even submit an application because it was just that close to it. The schools are there. In this location, there are fields between the school and the. But again, I don't want to give the impression that I'm trying to discard what the community here is saying. We hear you loud and clear. We don't want to be anybody's enemy. But that's what we were thinking when we brought it to the board.
And if I can also add, we're one long block from Cold Spring Elementary School in our current location, and then there's the Baltimore Freedom Academy, and there used to be a middle school there for many years. We've been at that location since 1994. We're also right in the back of a park, which they recently fenced in, and then City Springs swimming pool. And actually, we go over during the summer and provide some programs for the kids who use the city pool, because we like to do things for our neighborhood.
Our employees, not our patients, not our clients.
Yeah, not our clients, our employees. But so when we went to this location and we saw the schools at a farther distance than that, we believe that we could manage it effectively. We are not saying we send short shrift to any community. We do not. We do not. But from our perspective, because we've operated in that area for a long time, we've looked at a lot of different sites. This isn't the first site that we've seen.
And do you have a sense of what kind of fencing, you mentioned 6 to 8 foot, what
Yes.
type of fencing you intend to utilize?
Solid privacy fencing. We were actually looking at the ones with the vinyl slats between them, but you can still see through them. So our bid that we have pending right now is for the wood, solid, can't see through it, 6 foot on one end and 8 foot on the other end, because there's a general slope on the property. So to keep it at the same level all the way around, it's 6 foot on one and 8 on the other. And it's about 4 to 6 feet off of the sidewalk.
And anyone who is approaching or trying to enter the facility would necessarily have to go through that gate.
Right.
Employees and residents, of course.
Right. There would be a locked gate that would be for, like, backing in a truck or something to deliver whatever they deliver. Toilet paper or staples or something like that would be able to roll in through a locked gate.
Okay. Anything else at this point? Okay. Well, let's hear from the opposition. And don't know how it is you've organized yourselves, but go ahead and proceed, sir.
Sure. So good afternoon, members. I'm Councilman John Bullock, represent the 9th District, which includes the area in question. As you can see, we are represented by a host of community members, also neighborhood association presidents. I should also share that I'm a past president of the Evergreen Protective Association, which is also here today. Bridgeview Green Lawn is here as well as other members of the greater Rosemont community. I can share with you, I know we talk about challenges that relates to addiction. Clearly, I have family and friends who have struggled with addiction. I understand what that process is, as many of us do. I think there are also a couple process points that we should make at this point. So one, many of our members of the community, including myself, have not had any contact with the applicant prior to this point. And so having that kind of community outreach, having that kind of information at the outset would actually alleviate a lot of the concerns and have some transparency in this communication. The other thing that I would also say, and I know other members of the community can talk about the concentration of treatment facilities within the city. I've sat on boards and have talked about that. The other thing they can talk about is also around the conditions in the community and the impact that it would have. But I also stand in front of you also as a planner by trade. And so when we look at the role of zoning, we know zoning is a separation of uses, and I know some of it may sound professorial because I also teach it as well. But we start looking at the separation of uses, but also trying to maintain property values. And what you see here are also long-term residents, many homeowners, many long-term renters as well. You also mentioned that property in question, and clearly the current owner has not done a great job in terms of maintenance there, and I know they may see an opportunity for the applicant to come in, but that also does not do much in terms of a community that is trying to be on the upswing. We've had challenges over the course of decades, but clearly you have dedicated members, as you can see, who are here in opposition. You also look at the investment that's happening from city schools. That's a significant investment, and we're also looking at the role that it will play in terms of not only the baseball field for James Mosier, oldest continues running African American Little League within the nation. Looking at these two schools, Calverton and James Mosier, this is significant investment. But also looking at what it would do in terms of the fabric of the community. So I will speak from that point of view, right? That it doesn't sit within the character of the community. Even when we start talking about issues of privacy fences and other fences and things like that, that also creates physical barriers, but also can potentially be seen as an eyesore as well. We know that this is a community that has folks who care about it, and it's important for us to have that kind of communication, but also that kind of courtesy as well. Again, we are people who are very dedicated to community. There are folks who are working people who have come out. You also have faith communities that are here as well. So we talk about schools, we talk about churches. There are a number of churches that are within that area. And when you also start talking about visitation on the weekends, we have very vibrant church congregations as well. And there's already strained parking within the community as it relates to the churches on Sunday. So and on weekend services when there are funerals and things like that. So we have there are a number of concerns that we have, a number of legitimate concerns, but quite frankly, a lot of opposition as it relates to this. Not only the lack of communication, because posting on the building is important, but also these types of meetings. And this filled body, this filled room you can see today, if you were to go to Rosemont Neighborhood Improvement Association, if you were to go to Evergreen Protective Association, Bridgeview Green Lawn, if you were to go to Matthew Henson, you would see packed houses there as well. So this is only just a small representation of the people in the community who are concerned. I also saw the Western District Community Relations Council. Again, we all stand unified as it relates to this. Again, I understand the sensitivity, the reality that we have family, we have friends, we have young people who have gone through issues of addiction, but at the same time, we have to look at the character of the community. We have to look at the impact on the community. And again, I'm also thankful for the report from planning and planning staff. We meet with planning very often, as I mentioned, being a planner, but also as one who owns property, has lived in the community, has a family, also has friends in the community. Again, I want to stand on the side of folks in our community, making sure that we're doing what's best and thinking about the highest and best use of that property. And arguably, that treatment facility would not be the highest and best use of that property.
Good afternoon. My name is Samarja Brightful. I'm president of Evergreen Protective Association. I just would like to make one correction on the location. Oh, Samartra, Samontra, Brightful. The location that they're talking about is directly across the street from Calverton Middle School. It's also directly across the street from Winchester Apartments and also the baseball field. The main location, 1111 Whitmore Avenue, sits in the center of that location. That's our biggest concern because we have a lot of activities during the summer and sometimes when the weather is nice at the baseball field. And the baseball field is beautiful now. It's just been redone. And we want to keep it that way. And that fence would take away from the appearance of our neighborhood because everybody in our neighborhood basically keeps their lawns cut the same time. And it's beautiful. I've been around there for 68 years, and I don't plan on going anywhere. So there are other locations in that area that you can look at that will not directly impact our schools. And I have great concerns for our little people because this environment may say, hey, it's okay, and we'll get away with it. But we don't want that. We want to keep our kids out of trouble. And basically, if you talk to Western District, we have one of the best areas on the west side. I could still sit on my front porch at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So that's the reason, and I really don't appreciate that you did not contact any other neighborhood associations.
Speak to us, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry, that they did not contact any of the neighborhood associations, so we could have known what was going on. We were blindsided by this.
Okay.
And I'm proud that all
Let me
this.
interrupt you for a moment, because I think that some of you may also add that, some of the opposition may also add that you didn't have the communication. Let's just get that out of the way.
Okay.
What was did you attempt to reach out to the community prior to posting, going forward with this? Try to interact with them, let them know what's coming. and how you're gonna do it.
Actually, no, because when we went to the zoning office, the downstairs zoning office, I think it's the zoning administrator's office, their initial position to us was, you don't even need to apply. You're just using it for four unrelated people in each apartment. You don't really need to apply. We talked about it and said, we don't know what the neighborhood association is going to do. Also, at the same time, we had a financially very motivated landlord who was not willing to give us 6 months of time to go to community meetings, et cetera. Frankly, we're happy to see everybody here, but at the same time surprised because of the our perception of the use of this property. But again, it's not my time to talk. I'll yield.
I just want to get that point out of the way so that,
Right.
so everybody knows in the opposition, we get the fact that there was not sufficient, in your view, communication prior to coming here, so we don't need to spend time on.
And I'd like to end my conversation by saying we have 240 petitions that were signed in the little bit of time that we got the notice of. I would like that to go on record, please.
Okay, so you're submitting petitions, I guess, in opposition to
Yes,
the project.
yes, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's hold the applause, please.
Yeah, please, it's all on the record, so let's,
I just hold on. I just got one thing to say. I gotta get back to work. Go ahead.
come on up, sir.
Your name?
Name?
My name is Dana Wilkes. I currently live at 1110 North Woolwick. We were not informed. We received a message on the 24th that said we had to move at the 31st. That's it.
Okay,
So
understood.
And the chairman just said, all right, we
No,
we-
no, we
we're,
don't need any more comments about
we're not people
communication.
that we live there. Okay, yes.
Okay, we have that point. Sir, hold on.
my apologies.
Again, just try to keep the duplications to a minimum if we can. Sir?
I'm Dr. Larry Perry. I was raised in that area. I entered the neighborhood at 1951 as a child. We are trying to go back to our legacy. This is a very unusual neighborhood that a lot of people don't realize. When I was in that neighborhood, we had 7 doctors in that neighborhood, black MDs in that neighborhood. We had 2 dentists in that neighborhood. We had an explorer in that neighborhood. We had George Russell in that neighborhood. We had scholars in our neighborhood too with PhDs when I was a little kid. Now, through that neighborhood, the James Mosier School was outstanding, written up in the Sun paper as the #1 elementary school in the whole state of Maryland. We had kids that skipped into my accelerated class and skipped out. They were so smart. Well, I just want you to know, I want to be very serious about this because we don't want to lose our legacy. 14 people my age became MDs. Unbelievable, out of that small neighborhood. During the riots of 1968, my father, James Perry, and my mother, who was a nurse, and a number of the neighborhood people got together, and we said there will be no crime during this riot. On the other side of the bridge they may be, but not in this neighborhood. And the police, we had a police sergeant and a captain there, eventually a captain. And the word was, you do not have to come to our area. You do not have to cross that bridge to come here because we have no crime. That's the neighborhood that we want. We don't want a lot of people coming in. I know they have to have problems. I'm a doctor. I'm a cardiologist. I received the Congressional Award of Medicine. I also received the award from the FBI. I saw the sniper and reported it. And that's the first time he was noted in Maryland. They caught him then. But we have people that don't mess around, that want the best for our neighborhood. And that's what we're asking right now, not to tarnish our name, not to feel like you can just move anything into our neighborhood. We've got kids to raise. We've got elderly people that we want them to live out their last days and happy without crime. There is some crime. The people that come in are certainly not for our neighborhood, and we want to get rid of what's there already. But we certainly don't want it to increase, that's for sure. But the churches were incredible. But I just want to let you folks know that this just isn't any kind of neighborhood. It's a special, special neighborhood. And we don't need things that are going to make our kids fall by the wayside. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. So we understand the uniqueness of the neighborhood, the issue. No, you speak to us, but when you have the opportunity, come on. Who's
I'm next.
Who's next?
Good afternoon, board. My name is Ada Patterson. I have lived in the neighborhood since I was 8 years old. My parents was the first Native Americans in the 2300 block on Lambeau Street. What is not being said is when James Mosier is right across the street, as we've said. It's been in existence for 98 years. The Little League is also a part of history. It is the oldest African-American baseball league in the country. Next, across the street on the backside, because I know where this building is. I played at that building. Calverton is also connected with Lafayette Elementary School. So there's two schools. Across from that school is an Empowerment Academy. There are approximately 8 churches in that vicinity right there. Bringing a methadone clinic to our neighborhood is not what we need. Where's the statistical data? I have a law enforcement background. I have a court background. When you bring in facilities like this, where's the data? We don't have drug addicts in our neighborhood, and we don't want them to be brought into our neighborhood. I have family who suffer from addiction as well. The fact is, being a part of Baltimore Auxiliary Police Department and also retired from the Maryland Transportation Authority Police Department, I'm very familiar with the element that comes with methadone clinics. Across the street, we have the Bloods, drug dealers. What's going to prevent them from dealing drugs to the people in this facility? The only fences that we want is the ones that surround our playgrounds and our schools. Our children is what's most important. Because to me, if you sit back and you really think about it, if you're bringing in someone who has had some treatment for 30 to 60 days of intense treatment, how many people relapse? Security, I've done it, federal, city, and local. What they're proposing that they have not came with a bona fide secured plan of security is inadequate. It's not going to work because you can't just come in and start answering the questions on the cuff, because that's what's being done here. We can sit back and we can talk. They're at Broadway, but they're not saying that but over there at Broadway, because I worked over there too. They're also supported by the Baltimore City Police Department that patrols that area because that is a sector within the Baltimore City Police Department. We have Turk House, where the city has allotted $1.3 million to add on to that historical monument. What's down the street from Whitmore, this building, is a historical monument. It's the Armory. It's historical. Carver, I am a graduate of James Mosier Elementary School, and I was in that accelerated program. They wanted to skip me from the 3rd to the 5th. James Mosier was listed a couple years back in 90-something as one of the top 100 elementary schools in the United States. It should be a magnet and charter school in actuality. I'm a graduate from Calverton. I'm a graduate from Carverville Tech, which is we're pushing for a historical monument for that. It is the first African-American VOTEC school in the state of Maryland, which is less than an 1/8 mile away from this location that they're stating.
And let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Given your background that you've stated,
Yes.
and living in the neighborhood and knowing and being familiar with the area, and familiar with the security issues.
Yes.
How do you see this facility coming in? How do you foresee that impacting the youth, the children, the multiple children that you have located, given what you understand to be the proposed security measures that are taken?
I'm gonna put it to you like this visually. I think all of us has been down to Lexington Market, and we have seen the drug addicts nodding. I know, I have a friend who worked at the Chance building. They drug addicts, whatever, they combine methadone with another chemical. That's why they're able to nod and not fall over. As far as what is going to be seen, we have active children in Winchester, and that same facility where the gentleman just stated, he's a tenant. Where's the 60 days notice that you're supposed to give the tenants? It's not given. So where we have active children, we have our representative, Mr. Bullock. Right next door to him is a special needs daycare, licensed. So we don't need our kids to see what they already see on TV.
You have a belief that the proposed fencing is not going to
No, not only that.
that issue?
No, sir. Not only that, you put up a solid fence, a wood fence. I don't care. The vinyl, I do home improvement too. It's going to be an eyesore for a community that's already done. Unfortunately, my 80-some-year-old neighbor, who's been in the neighborhood when they had woods in most of these areas, stated that Evergreen Protective Association, which is the square of Edmondson, Bentlow, Lafayette, as well as Bradish, and extends. We have a very close knit. That's why you see all these other neighborhood associations. Everybody in this line is not here. You have several people that's sitting that's a part of the neighborhood. The majority of the people in here is from that neighborhood. And the fact is that when you really look at it, the way that neighborhood was planned, back in the day, it was planned that there would be no businesses on the inside of the infrastructure of the neighborhood association. That's why when you go and you see the stores, they're on the corners. We don't have a facility like this except for Turk House. If they want to come in, go and partner up with Turk House. It's already there.
Where is Turk House in relation to your facility, the
In
proposed
relation to
facility?
this, if you go down one block from where they're at, make a left on Bradish, and then make a right on Rayner, it's right there. It's less than a mile. It's not even a quarter of a mile. Partner up with them. But to bring something into a residential neighborhood where we have kids that we want to flourish. This gentleman that just spoke, I remember him. And he's right. I had the doctor living behind me. I had the dentist living behind me. The fact is that we don't need this facility or any of the other facilities that they're proposing in our neighborhoods. Go somewhere else. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hello.
Please, again, hold the applause, please. This is all being recorded.
My name is Nadine Page. I thank Councilman Bullock's office on that Thursday week. A notice came by about the proposed residential treatment center, and I went there that Friday after receiving the notice.
Yes, ma'am.
To look at the property to see if there was any signage. There was no signage unless I walked up on the property. I had to walk on the property to see the signage, so that the signage wasn't in a conspicuous place. I also rode by there today, and That's one entrance. That's on the side of the 2500 block of Winchester, and there's still no signage. And I reached out to my community to find out if anyone knew about it, and no one knew about it. I was just concerned that, like someone said, we were blindsided.
Just hold on. Mr. Baumgartner, do we have any issues with regard to posting on this?
There are affidavits filed in each file. Haven't seen the photographs yet, but the code requires posting on the front of the property in a clear and conspicuous place. Sign has to be 3 feet by 4 feet. Letters have to be 2 inches tall, as long as it meets those requirements. I would say by the outpouring of folks here in opposition that it seems like folks did know about the hearing. But again, I haven't seen the photographs. So.
Only because when the notice came across my email, I took measures to reach out to my community partners, my community presidents, the community faith-based, the pastors in the community, and we reached out and we communicated, and then the presidents in turn reached out to the people that were in their organizations, and we did meet. So
okay.
it
Well, I would
wasn't
simply
because of
say
signs.
With regard to it looks like the requirements have been satisfied with regard to the formal posting that the rules require. And again, we're well aware that has been little, if any, communication as between the applicants and the community. So with regard, is there anything else you'd like to state with regard to the issue or the impact on the community?
I'm just sorry that it got to this point where we could not have reached out across the aisle and had dialogue and conversations with each other so that you could come to a better understanding of the residential treatment center that you wanted to put in the community. Because people's concerns are real. Whether they're perceived or based on facts, they're real. And this facility is directly across from Calverton. It faces the parking lot at Calverton, and it's also down the street from a recreational facility. And you can't get a true picture of how all of this is going to work because Calverton, the students at Calverton have been bused to another school while these renovations are taking place, so you don't have a true picture of the traffic. And as one who, and I think a lot of people in here who have had family members who have, and we've seen the debilitating, the devastating effect that drugs have on people's lives and our family, and when our families were struggling, we wanted nothing more than for them to recover. And we see the power that recovery when recovery happens and people are able to reclaim their lives. So we're not I stand not in opposition to recovery, but just this particular site.
Okay, I understand that, but here's what I would say to the remaining folks on the opposition. We're aware of the proximity, the location, the presence of the children. What we'd like to hear, if you can offer that, is given the proposal, which includes fencing, such that there would presumably be no interaction between the individuals on the outside and the individuals on the inside, other than it being not something that you want in the community, how do you envision it impacting negatively the community? And I prefer specifics if you can.
All right. My name is William Neal. I'm president of James Mosier Baseball. Yes. James Mosier Baseball has been in this community for 60 years.
That's what we understand.
Okay. Just to show you, here's a picture of our new field. Okay. 2 years ago, the Ripken Foundation came in, and they spent $1.2 million to renovate this field. This field is now called at BG&E Park and Eddie Murray's Field.
Yes, sir.
Okay, at the back of this field, I met 2 weeks ago with the Orioles. I'm trying to get the Orioles to come in to fix our second field up, okay, so that we can have some liable places for the kids to come play and be safe. If you look in this picture, in this left-hand corner, they're the two buildings. Okay, that's 1110 and 1111.
Yes, sir.
Warwick, right there by the park.
Okay.
Right there at the entrance to our second field.
Yes, sir.
Okay? We think that this will have a negative effect. It will also affect the money that we're trying to get other organizations to put back in our community so we can have something for the kids.
When you
This-
say we believe it would have a negative effect and will impact the money you can get, why do you
Right.
say that?
Because when they come out and they see a gated apartment building looking like a prison, then they're going to say, are you going to be able to get the kids to come here? Are you going to be able to motivate the kids to want to come around this? My biggest concern is that we're going to lose kids because of this, because it's going to look like a prison across the street from the field. And we've been here 60 years. We've worked with over 20,000 kids. And we want to continue this. On November the 1st, we're celebrating our 60th anniversary.
Okay.
So we
understand-
honestly believe this will have a negative effect on our program.
Okay. Thank you. Anything further on that point?
That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
I'm speaking to a totally different subject.
Okay, your name, sir?
Rod Easter.
Okay, sir.
And I'm going to break my anonymity in doing so. I'm so passionate about this. I was born in the 800 block of Bentlow. I played at James Mosier starting in 1965. I went to James Mosier Elementary, Calverton Junior High, and I am a recovering addict.
Yes, sir.
And grew up in a good home. But addiction is real. When I went into treatment the first time in 1984, they said 3 people out of 10 will make it. 3 out of 10. I was one of the 7 that didn't make it initially. I did get clean in 1986. I've been clean almost 34 years. Now, I've done a lot of people may be shocked to hear me do this because a lot of people know me. But I think that this community needs a break. When you put, and I don't know if it's methadone, but I was on a methadone program at one time. Methadone is another drug, just to keep you from doing what you do in the street. We just had a shooting in a clinic a couple of weeks ago where several people were killed. There was talk in the defendant's testimony about giving the Narcone to somebody laying out in the street. Can you imagine our kids coming home from school and seeing somebody laying in the street? I was blessed to get clean. I didn't get clean the first time. It's a very serious disease. It's a family disease. Everybody knows it. And I'm really concerned when someone is an opportunist with their property, just not to care what goes there, just so they can get a paycheck. It's too close to all the things that are there. The people who come there may have good intentions, but all of them are not going to make it. All of them are not going to be model patients that come in, do what they're supposed to do. There will be drugs transacted. There will be sex. There will be illegal activity. Those people will be put out, and the community may suffer. Are we willing to take a chance with just one child or one family? Suppose a person comes there who has some baggage that somebody wants to repay them about. There's a whole lot of conditions that I know about coming from that background that have not been discussed by the defendants. They make it sound like it's going to be peachy keen and hunky-dory, and that's not the truth. So I applaud the Zoning Commission for not approving this at this point. I applaud the community for coming out, the associations, all this stuff that's in opposition to this. We have some problems in that community. We don't need to add to them. And granted, they do have to go somewhere, but not in the middle of a baseball field, schools, and a community that's really trying to rebound. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Very well, sir.
Hi, my name is Alma Evans. I'm a registered nurse. I've been kind of on both sides, as they have said, adding something to the pot. Like he said, I don't know if it's methadone or not. Methadone initially back in the 70s came on the market through I maybe shouldn't say that, but at any rate, through a clinic setting where it was supposed to be a bridge. It's no longer a bridge, it's a lifestyle for people. When I look up and I have to give someone 120 milligrams of a medication a day for them to function, how do you expect that to be? I have not heard any structure as to a patient coming in, this is what we have in place to move them from point A to point B. Are you using medication? Because I haven't heard that yet, whether they use a medication to get them employable. Because if you are, then I don't know how successful your program has been in the past. Seeing that you already have a program and a situation up on Broadway, it seems to me you would come in here with some information that we could feel better about, saying, oh, okay, well, maybe we can rethink this. I haven't heard that yet. You're already established, but you haven't put anything substantial on the table to say, this is what happens when we have someone come in and house them for 3, 6, 9 months, whatever it is. This is what the daily activities look like. This is what our expectations are of them, and this is what they need to do for us, so that we can be successful on both ends, whether they come out and be able to be pillars of a community, whatever they need to do. Get educated, jobs. I'm working right now for kids in my family, my youngest, to get him in college so that he can do something. So it's not like this is oblivious to everybody. We're talking about some life-sustaining things here. I've lived in the community. I bought my house in 1992. Well, started buying it. I finished paying for it, but at any rate, spent a lot of money because, see, I'm getting to the age of retirement. So now I'm looking at me being in the house by myself because everybody grown and gone, and now I got to deal with, like the lady said, it is an honor to be able to sit out on your front porch and have your coffee in the morning without worrying about if this, that, and those. But my main concern, like I said, I haven't seen this point of view brought up. What is your plan? How are you going to put your plan in place, and what do you have in plan? Is there going to be a doctor on board? How many nurses are going to be there? You talk about security, but most of these people have psych problems. I haven't heard not one time did you say you have a psychiatrist or even somebody to help them move from point A to point B. What is your plan?
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
My name is Robert Hunt. I'm the president of ARCO, the Lions of Rosemont Community Organization, which have 18 communities on it. Some of them are here. You got some of the letters. You keep asking, what kind of impact? What kind of, you notice that we have children, we have adults. I lived in that area, and I call it my oasis, because I can sit on my porch. I don't have no problems. But I know for a fact, if you bring this type of establishment in, we're going to have problems, and there's no guarantee. They're not guaranteeing us nothing. And if they can't guarantee us, I don't think our communities, people, churches, schools want that type of thing. And I don't think you want that on your mind, knowing that their impact is a negative thing. That
Let me ask you, sir, because what it is we're seeking is, what is the impact?
The impact is a negative thing that's going to downgrade our area we're trying to upgrade.
Okay.
Okay? Because we've been working very hard as a communities, multiple communities together, trying to bring things to build it back up.
Understood. Thank you, sir.
My name is Cleveland Mason. I'm a 63-year resident in the area, the community that we're talking about. I attended James Mosier Elementary School, Calverton Middle School. I grew up in that community. I serve as the pastor of the Perkins Square Baptist Church, not far from where they're planning to locate. On Sunday, I had a brief conversation with those who are members of our church, and as you know, with what's happening in our city, it's difficult to get people to come to church at night. It's difficult to get people to consider coming out in the afternoons. Fear is gripping people's hearts. And yet, as people of faith, our desire is certainly to see people's lives get better, for them to transition. But sometimes when things are so close, it's difficult for anybody to really be at peace. And property values are a concern. We're concerned that
this community, which has been experiencing a lot of stress these days, safety is a #1 issue in this community. And this creates a new development of stress.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Deneen Griffin, and I am a Baltimore City school teacher. I live in the 2400 Deneen, D-E-N-I-N-E, Deneen Griffin, and I am a Baltimore City school teacher. I've been teaching this year, be 34 years. I call them my little darlings. So I walk down the street. I live in the 2400 block, and our block made the Sun paper as one of the upcoming blocks. Our neighborhoods are upcoming. We're doing so well. So I walked in that area, and I just stood there. And I thought about the darlings. I thought about when she mentioned that somebody was laying down, they had to do this. And like the gentleman had said, our children would come to school and say, Miss Griffin, so, did you see that person? That person was lying on the ground. They're going to start asking questions. We, as teachers, I don't want to get emotional, have to answer these questions. I see too much in the Baltimore school system. I see too much. Now, I'm talking about James Moser. I teach middle school, but I'm right around the corner. Looking at these little darlings. I'm looking at the little darlings, and we have to answer them. All the questions they're going to ask about somebody laying on the street, or I've heard my middle school students, Miss Griffin, it was the guy out there, and they was gnawing, they was like, Miss Griffin, and some of them are afraid. Not saying it's going to happen, but more than likely that it will. So this is what our children is going to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I hate to repeat it, but you've heard what's been presented.
Right.
So if we can have something in addition, different, separate, apart from that, because we can well take into account what's been presented thus far.
My name is John Carrington. I am the president of Bridgeview Green Lawn Neighborhood Association. That is the heart of my community, and he never came to me, okay? My concern was, and you talked about security and things that matter, okay? I had a brother, Russell H. Carrington, okay? That facility went nationwide, and it didn't have all those security features. It was called the Carrington House. It probably went in before y'all in zoning. It used to be up at Walbrook Junction, but it went nationwide all over the country, and that's one of the best facilities in the nation, as my understanding. Not only John Hopkins okayed it. So my concern is, I wish they would have came to us.
Okay, they didn't, sir. We understand that. So
But the other concern is that particular facility, you talked about fences and things of that nature. The Carrington House had no 6-10 feet facility, that type of security and things of that nature, but they had that kind of residents in there, because I've been in there and talked to some of the residents that were in the Carrington House, you know, who seek that help, who had a psych associate that was there to helping them, who had jobs down at Hopkins and other hospitals and things of that nature. So my concern is this particular facility is not adequate, not for the Bridgeview Green Lawn Association.
what does that mean? It's not adequate.
Not adequate, in other words, is that as other facilities are and stuff like that and whatnot, it would be detrimental to me as one who coach, work with kids 4 and 5 year old. I have a T-ball team and things of that nature, and
For all the reasons that everyone else has said?
For reason.
Do you have any other additional reasons?
No.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Richard Fuller. I live in the 900 block of Warwick Avenue, which is on that street, just 2 blocks away. This facility will exist. And the one thing that really bothered me about it is that, quite naturally, as has been said, is the lack of information. And the thing is, we all want solutions to these situations. But, we have to know what the goals are, how the goals are going to be implemented, how it's going to benefit our community. For one thing, I'll say in particular, it will not benefit our community to have something that stands out, that's fenced in, that looks different than the rest of the community. if it was going to be anything, we want it to be something that will blend in, something that will enhance. So that if people look in our area, that they don't see something like that, well, if they were thinking about moving in, it might drive them away. Now, I've been living in my home since 1992, and it's been a wonderful community to live in. I won't say we don't have any problems. We do have some, but there's a whole lot we don't have. And we want to keep it that way and to have it improve quite naturally as much as possible. And that's all I have to say.
Very well, thank you.
Hello, my name is Ella Jackson. I live at 1111 Woodmore. I'm only up here because they didn't give us enough time. And right now I'm stressful. I had an anxiety attack last week, was in the hospital. They literally only gave us 30 days. And my kids are staying with my aunt because of this situation. They already started digging around there and everything. And the letter that they sent out, I got it June the 18th. Well, June the 21st, because I had just got paid. And they just collected rent money last month.
So maybe you live in the current apartment
Yes, I live in the current building. And when I say it's very stressful, it's very stressful. Whereas though, if y'all know y'all was gonna do this project, why y'all ain't been saying nothing when I gave y'all money last month? And I don't understand what's going on because nobody ain't communicating. Why is the landlords, why is the people that's selling the property not here? It's very stressful. When I say very stressful, I'm trying not to cry. And to find a place, how about this? If y'all want us to move out of them apartments, give us some money to relocate. Everybody can't snap their finger and just find a place, because I've been looking for about almost a month now, and it's hard. And they know I was only paying $900, and half of these houses be 13, 11, 12, and we supposed to leave today, really. These people is calling all day, nonstop, talking about, have you found a place? You know this your last day. And here's the letter. Like, really? And I'm shaking right now because I'm so stressed. And it's a headache, and I don't understand if they know. I have kids, and my job don't pay what your job pay. And it's hard to find a job that pay good and find a place to go by your income what I make.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just saying, it's very hard.
Okay, we have that. We have, again, the issue that there's been little communication, little time, and residents of the current
And they started the
location have been put
process.
upon.
And when I say they started the process, they already digging and got flags and got the little
Okay.
gates around it.
Okay, we have that as well.
And so this might short circuit a little bit of any more testimony about the apartment complex. That's not before the board, so that's a separate legal issue that you'd have to take to
Your current,
correct. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that part was not what's before the board and not from these particular applicants for this property.
So, sir, it falls to you with regard to everything that's been stated.
Yeah, my name is Minister Glenn Smith.
Yes, sir.
And I'm a board member with the Coppin Heights Community Development Corporation.
Yes, sir.
And we own and operate the Stabilization Center on Raynor Avenue. And when we came into the community, we took community members out to California to look at the model that we were putting in there. And the main emphasis was no one will be walking up to that facility. They are brought in. After they have treatment, they are taken out to wherever they need to go to their homes. And I have one concern. If they're going to be dispensing drugs on the premises and don't have an armed guard, what's to stop somebody from coming and taking advantage of those drugs?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are going to take I'm sorry, we have, okay. No, all right. Go ahead, sir, come on up.
My name is Dean Dodson, and I'm a concerned citizen. I live in the 2400 block of Aruna Avenue, which is 2 blocks from the proposed facility. You want to know the negative impact. Okay.
I want to know the impact. If you believe they're negative, I want to know that.
Right. Well, I think this is my opinion. Okay, you're going to have a trash issue. They said they're going to have parking in front of their building, but you also have apartment complex directly across the street where there's not enough parking right there. So we know what people do. They sit in their car, they throw their chicken bones outside the window. Not only that, there's no bus service where this place is proposed at. So that means that people won't have to walk from the bus if they catch the buses. And that's going to be another trash problem. Because let's be real, I see it every day in my neighborhood and I get upset. People walk in the neighborhood, they're eating something and they throw the trash away. All right, now, directly across the street from this place, directly across the street, I mean, there's a stone throw, there's a elementary school. So the kid's gonna say, "Mommy, what is this place right here that has these fences around it?"
We've heard that, sir.
Okay, then. So thank you for letting me to share, and hope y'all use common sense on this issue and deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to go? Mr.
Yeah,
Cheatham?
I don't think we're going to be very long. I know it's in a rebuttal, but Kim Smith, who is our Chief Operating Officer, Kim Wireman is our Chief Executive Officer. She just wanted to address you as part of the rebuttal. Go ahead.
Ma'am, you haven't been sworn, have you?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. I just wanted to add, because I know you were saying you really want to know about the impact on the community and not communicating with the community prior to this project. BHSB reached out to our agency asking and stating that the community association wanted to get together with Power Recovery, and we welcomed that, and we said that we would get together, and they were saying, this was as of yesterday, that they said that we could get together with the community to answer and address any questions. So if that did not happen the way it was supposed to happen, it was we could have maybe addressed it in a different way, but it was every intention for us to come together with the community, again, with BHSB as a mediator, coming in and addressing any questions that the community had. And when I was listening to some of the testimonies and I heard some of the residents saying that the impact that we would make on the community, that it would be such a negative impact, we've had our clients play baseball with the staff and with the clients play baseball with the Turk House on the Carver Field right in that very same community for years. And it's never been anything that was negative. They cleaned up after they left the community. You would have even known that it was a treatment center playing ball. So these are people that we're talking about. And people say we don't want them in our community. Get help, they need help. But this is the very own community. When we say take it to Pikesville, I'm a member of this community as well. I'm an African-American woman, so we're not just talking about taking it to Pikesville, take it to somebody else. I'm a member of this community. The residents need help. These are people too, trying to change their lives. And sometimes we miss that. So when we're talking about the impact, our agency, and I heard them talking about the agency, what we didn't do, but what we did do and what our intention is all the time as an agency is to see what can we do to help the community. Baltimore City has a crisis with addiction. That community has a crisis with addiction. We know that. So any part that we can play as a positive part, that's what we're going to do. Is it going to be 100% proof? No, it isn't. But we try our best to come into communities, welcoming communities, to say we want to make a difference in your community, whether we be participating in the events that happen with the children at school, whether it be a cleanup. We have our clients go out and clean up the community, whether it be police engagement in the community. What can we do as a part of helping the community better? So it's not our intentions to go into the community just to make money. We truly do want to make a difference, a positive difference. And today, I'm not sure if that was necessarily spoken about, and because I guess the way that it has happened in the community, I understand them having some issues about it, but that was not Power Recovery's intention, and that's not who we are. And I didn't want to leave this hearing today with that type of representation, because that's not who we are as an agency. We care about Baltimore City. We invest in our community that we're in. We're throughout the community. I don't want to start naming out properties where we actually have residents units throughout those neighborhoods. I don't want to start getting into that, because then you'd start looking around, because you start saying, well, hey, we haven't had any issues. Who is those people? They are just people trying to get their lives together, and we're the type of agency that's trying to help those people make those differences.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just want to clarify the record.
Let me ask one question. I think one piece of information that I don't have is the individuals, when they're coming to your facility, how will they get there? Someone had mentioned that there's not a bus stop near the area.
They'll be coming from the higher level treatment facility on one of our vans or buses and brought
So you
there.
can directly transport them to the facility.
Right. And also, if somebody decides that they want to get out of treatment, they're quitting and leaving, then we would bring them back down to our headquarters to be out processed, and they'd be let go there, where there are, a bus stop right there. But that would be down in the other thing. I'm not going to argue any law or any facts other than to clarify some issues, and that is, you are supposed to find the highest best use for it. We think the highest best use is helping these people who are dying. And Ms. Wireman did mention that down on Broadway, where it's not a facility where there's a fence, but it's actually a street where addicts are 24 hours a day. We patrol the neighborhood, and we do find people, not our clients, we do find people that are hit with the Narcan and revived and taken to the ER. We just do that as part of our service to the neighborhood. To clear the record, we are not a methadone clinic. Nobody in our place gets methadone. They get Suboxone and medical treatment, and they're weaned off of it over time. Let me see. There was some discussion given about some people didn't think it was going to be secure enough, and then other people thought, well, geez, there's going to be a fence, and it's not going to be pretty. So we're kind of on a no-win situation there. We have to have the fence. So we felt that you see in an apartment complex, a lot of times you'll see these 6-foot, 8-foot wooden fences around the apartment complex, and so that's why we were going for that. We do have a psychologist on staff. We do have medical doctors who will be there every day, 3 nurses, et cetera. 3 out of 10, the gentleman mentioned 3 out of 10 make it. I wish our success rate was that high. Actually, with fentanyl and the modern derivatives of heroin and other drugs, maybe 3 out of 10 don't make it. They may make it through the 90-day period, but then 3 years later, they may relapse. So, we're trying to keep people alive, and eventually they do figure their way out. The tenants, I know this is obvious, but for those that are still in the thing, we're not the landlords. The landlords were supposed to give notice whenever they give notice under their leases, and we had presumed that everybody was legally notified and given enough time, so I can't really speak to that.
Will there be signage on the buildings?
Oh, yes, yeah. So the signs
What
were
kind of signage?
You mean the signs we put up?
No, I'm sorry. If the appeal were approved,
no,
would there be signage?
No,
displaying
like drug treatment facility. No, it'd just be basically an apartment complex with a gate going in and out. To address the posting issue, they were professionally printed posters that met the specifications. We took pictures of them when we posted them. We do know that at one point one was pulled down because that's when our guy was over there and he got shot with the paintball gun by a drive-by person driving by, screaming at him about dirty in the neighborhood or something like that. I wasn't there. So listen, the truth is if the board decides to deny it, we'll be okay. We're going to do whatever we got to do somewhere else. And I understand, I put myself in any of their shoes, I'd be saying, maybe I'd be here saying the same thing. With that, I think we'll just submit to the board's wisdom on the subject. Do you have something to say? Uh-oh, watch out.
I promise I won't be long. You guys have been very patient. I want to say to the people in the community that when Steve happened to mention that we could have avoided the entire zoning process by setting this up differently, and we chose not to do that because we wanted the community to know that we were going in, and that is exactly what we did. With the proper postings for zoning and whatnot. We don't doubt your commitment to drug treatment and to helping people in any way as any part of this. And we are glad that we were here to listen to you today. I just want to leave the community with that. We are trying to do the best we can to serve our clients, to get those residential beds, to get a 2-year continuum so people have a chance. We don't doubt at all your commitment to that and your participation in improving Baltimore City. I ask you, please, not to doubt ours. Thanks.
Very well, thank you. That'll be the end of the hearing, ma'am.
Again, I'm sorry.
Yes, we're not going back on more opposition. Ma'am, that case is, we're moving on.
You done with this?
Yes. We'll take your break now?
You mind if I just take 30
No. We're going to take a short break, and we'll resume shortly.
Quick bathroom break.
Calling the case 2019-233, 2402 Albion Avenue, Shea Munoz. Good afternoon, ma'am. Going to wait for the opposition to come up. Is there opposition to two?
Yeah.
Okay, come on up, please. We can swear the witnesses.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Munoz, this is a request to install a driveway with parking space in the front yard, is that correct?
It's on the side corner, yes.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Munoz, why don't you tell us about your project?
Well, okay. Let me get my- First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to at least express my concerns, frustrations, and lack of knowledge regarding this entire matter. I know how important it is to live in a residence that you're happy and you try to want to be a good neighbor. I moved into this home in 1972 with my mom. And I even went to school with the homeowner daughter. And my mother passed away in 2013, and she left the house to me and my siblings. We were not aware of any zoning laws. We were just a typical prudent individual who wanted to improve the home and, you know, as well with the value, and do something for our uncle, who has, in the past year, has, health has declined. In 2013, as I mentioned, we inherited this home. In 2007, I discussed, my uncle and I, which is my mother's brother, we discussed installing a 2-track, just the grass in the middle and just the 2 tracks in the front of the house on the side. My uncle dug up the grass on each side and put some pathway blocks, so to get an idea, to give an idea to the contractor how we wanted it. Because when the inspector came, one of the inspector came, he said it looked like you already had a driveway. And that's because we had already had that there for about 1.5 to 2 years. And there were people in our neighborhood who already have driveways. We were not aware of any, and this is, you probably have the pictures of it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. And we were not aware of any zoning laws, and I feel really bad that this was not discussed prior. We found out about it after the work was done and then we got this stop order. The work had already been completed. No one came to us to say anything. No one came to us and said, are you aware that they changed the zoning laws in 2017? You can't have a driveway on your front corner with a semi-detached home. We never had this discussion. Had we had this discussion, I wouldn't be here today because I never would have done it.
Understood.
Ms. Munoz, when was the driveway installed?
It was installed on May 24th, and they ended on May 26th.
Okay, and
a curb cut?
Yes. And that's the thing. I got the application from the Baltimore Department. This is the application.
I see a copy of it.
You can.
Yeah, we'll have a copy.
So when we were under the impression that we needed a permit, I thought that when I got this was all I needed. I didn't know, and when I got this, they didn't tell us anything about going next door to make sure that the zoning, your residence was approved. I contacted the Laurelville Association, Improvement Association, which I'm a member. They had no clue of any zoning laws, and they sent me an email, and they felt really bad, but they had no idea, this is the email that I got from them, that they had no idea that I wasn't able to put a driveway in my yard. They weren't aware of any new zoning laws. And here's a picture of my neighbor. My neighbor has one, a full one, 2 of them, all in the neighborhood around the corner. They all had them. So I was not aware. This is my neighbor. This is one of my neighbor's pictures.
Okay, this is not in your application?
I don't believe so. And I was told by the inspector that
you know, I see other people had it in the driveway, but the zoning laws changed. I was not aware of that. Neither was my uncle. Here's another driveway right up the street. I put the addresses on them. We were not aware of that at all. And so they're full driveway. We just had the 2-track driveways.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm holding in my hand a permit. It's a right-of-way permit 2019-1155990, which was issued by the Department of Transportation. This should have been referred to zoning when the right-of-way permit was applied for, and then zoning should have reviewed it at that time. For whatever reason, it just wasn't referred to zoning, or I'm not sure what happened in that step. But in the typical process, this would have been caught by zoning. They would have denied the right-of-way permit
Right, and I would have
pending
done it.
a zoning hearing. So I just wanted to fill the board in, like with that detail.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. Anything else, ma'am?
Let me see, I was. That's what I was also going to say. I was going to say, well, in the summer of 2018, a Baltimore City inspector came. He noticed those tracks and everything, and he said, you know, you have to have a permit. And I said, yes, I'm aware that I have to have a permit. We're going to get a permit because we want to do it the right way. At that point, he never said anything about it's not zoned. He said I needed a permit. Once again, when I got this permit, I was under the assumption that this was all I needed. He never said anything about that it was not zoned in that area. So May 29th, I started the March 29th, I started the process. I went and filled out the application to get the curb cut. And on the application, it does say curb cut, because I knew that that was the city. I'm thinking, I'm just digging up my own grass in my own yard. So I'm gonna go and get the permit for them to cut the curb. And that's what we did. On June the 16th is when I received the stop work, but the work had already been completed. And since then, it's just been hectic. June 11th, I completed another application. I was told that I needed a permit. I was told that I needed the zoning. The zoning needed to provide the permit. So I went ahead and I was getting ready to purchase the permit because I wanted to do the right thing.
Sure.
And when they told me, well, no, you need to get the variance first because you may not be allowed to do that. And so I paid for the variance, and this is why we're here today, to have the hearing.
Very well. Is there anything else, ma'am, you'd like to either add to the record or offer in testimony? Okay, thank you.
And you have my letter about my uncle and his sickness. I didn't put in there about my sister. My sister is in a nursing home. From time to time, on occasions, my sister would come to the house with the permission of the nursing home, but it was difficult for her to get to the house. But I don't think I put in there about my sister.
No, there's not information in there.
And so she hasn't been there in a while because it's difficult for her to get, but the driveway, at least we could back up and she could get closer. She's closer to the house and she could get in the house.
Understood. Very well. Okay. Folks who would like to speak?
Yes, sir. If I
Could you move to the microphone, please?
Sure, absolutely.
State your name.
My name is Richard Green. I live at 2401. So my girlfriend here is Shelley Arrington. Her family, this is her childhood home. She's been there, the parents, since the mid-1950s.
Yes,
and what is taking place is that this is not the first incident of this quote-unquote parking issue. It actually, as she iterated, happened somewhere like 18 months ago. When we came home, there were 2 tracks dug up on the landscape of the front of the house. There was
whose house?
Her house.
Okay.
There was some gravel that was placed down. And what had taken place was that the individuals who had done that work, once they saw a gas valve in the lawn, they stopped. Called the supervisor, I guess that's who he was, and he came out and said, okay, well, she has to go downtown or whatever to get a permit, okay? And that was the end of that work. They didn't cut the sidewalk up. they didn't do anything, okay? So fast forward, it stayed looking exactly like that, where you had these pavers that were on top of some gravel so long that the grass had started growing back up in there, okay? That's how long it was going on. So what had taken place was during the Memorial Day holiday, perfect storm, where the federal government was closed, Miss Utility, the state government was closed, city government was closed, and it was a 3-day weekend. Had individuals to come through there to literally put these 2 concreted strips in, crack open the sidewalk, and create an opening there. That's what happened. Okay, they looked a little suspicious because it was over the weekend, and it was general knowledge that one knew that they had to have a permit to do all this, because we believe that they were actually told that before the first time. Where this was placed, and I have a picture of it, there's a gas valve that is now a gas valve that's been in the ground for 60 years, sticking up some 2 inches out the ground, out the concrete. Now, this same area also had to have the BG&E had come in and dug in that area because the main gas line for that block is in those lawns right over there where she put that concrete. There was a gas leak in the street about 3 years prior to her putting those pavers in. BG&E had to come out, dig the grass up to get to the lines to replace it because the neighbor across the street had done some renovations. They had a big dump body that they were dumping debris in for the house, you know, the renovations. And the change in temperature between the cement that was receiving the sun and the dump body, the cement under there, which was cooler, actually put a stress on the gas pipe. And that's how it cracked. You could have sat in your car with the catalytic converter, which runs anywhere from 400 to 600 degrees, and it literally created an explosion instantly, okay? So this is where she chose when the state, the federal, and the city government or entities that were looking and say, hey, you know, you can't do this kind of thing without a permit. She chose to do it on that weekend. These guys, they heard, you know, they were scurrying about to put these little pavers in. I mean, this, excuse me, these 2 little, these cement strips in to get this done. Then what had taken place was I knew there was something awry, and I called Councilman Ryan Dorsey's office. He sent his someone from out of constituent services to come around and do a survey and say, yes, Mr. Green, that wasn't approved for a permit. You don't have the space to put a drive there. It's too narrow, okay? And they were the ones that had come downtown and filed some sort of suit. He said they were going to get in contact with the deputy of the department or something to that effect. But they were the ones that had come around because once it happened before, and I saw how sneaky it was done on a 3-day weekend, I knew that, hey, this is not a person you can talk to. We need to call the councilman about it. Now, here's the deal. I don't owe anybody anything when it comes to a subculture of, you know, breaking the law or criminality. I could care less because I have to pay my taxes. I'm a voter. I'm a constituent. I'm a veteran. I feel really that there's some tension because I won't co-sign for this subculture of doing what you want to do versus later for what everybody, how everyone else is impacted. I can show you a picture right here. This is where that was placed, okay? This vehicle right here is her uncle's vehicle, okay? You know, I used to years ago briefly talk to him. This is my brand new vehicle, okay? This black one right here, all right? Between that vehicle there and this vehicle right here, the 2 white vehicles, there isn't almost about 10.5 feet, maybe 11, you know, if the cars are really parked up against the curb. This vehicle that her uncle drives is 16 feet long. I got out of this black vehicle right here, my new vehicle, with my door open, just getting my bags from work. He pulled up, he was this close to me, okay? This close to me. Now, I didn't understand why he was so close until I found out about this particular vehicle. The space is not even there for you to turn with the radius on this vehicle to get out to, perhaps potentially do a 90-degree. That's why where and it's a little bad picture, but you can see like dark where they painted the curb, which is, I thought the public right away, there is no one that has paint on the curbs around there. Okay, you can see where the tire marks are, where he backed up over the pieces here. Okay, that's the other thing, if anyone wants to take a look at that. We also have this right here, where you have two vehicles parked up in there that don't even clear the sidewalk. So literally, this same sidewalk that's been here since the 1950s, when someone's walking down there, as a, knowing that, they're just gonna walk down the sidewalk and that's gonna be it. They don't know there's a car on the other side of that bush right there. They have no concept that there's a car on the other side of that bush right there, because these houses here sit in the midst of homes that are single-family homes, and some of them are really like colossal in size, maybe like 3,000, sometimes 4,000 square feet in older sections. These tracts of homes were put in the 50s, and it was almost, you can literally see it, where it was a group of homes set in the middle of a larger home community. So they're very close. They're very close. And I definitely have concerns about a gas line that's in the ground that had already been serviced by BG&E for a leak, having cement poured over it, where there's a potential for another gas issue. Because I'm just going to be quite honest here. Her issue or her concern or her desire for a parking pad or whatever does not rise to the occasion where I have to up and leave in the middle of the night because there's some sort of gas explosion. I don't care about a feeling. I don't care about the tears. I don't care about the subculture, or I should go along with what's going on there. If I lived in that house and she lived in the house I'm talking about, I can guarantee you they would have been down here. They would have called about the permit. They would have called about everything else that was needed to have this thing placed in here. Now, the other thing I would like to show you folks is what I have on my screen here, because you can see the dishonesty, okay? When Mr. Dorsey came around to share or to tell us that this is not zoned for a parking pad and they didn't have a permit, I guess they were told that they had to put up this sign here or something like that, okay? I saw them put up two, Home Depot buckets and had the sign placed up like this. But if you'll notice, folks, on the top side, you don't see any information about the date or anything, okay? Because it wasn't designed for you to see it. It was designed for it to be concaved in so anybody walking down the street couldn't see what was going on. All you could see is something about the room R4 or something like that in June 30th, okay? It speaks about the level of deceit, dishonesty, snakery type behavior. And this is not the first time. I've had a situation where she called downtown on my car years ago, and I know I'm being animated and verbose, years ago, saying, hey, listen, my neighbors, they have their tree is, blocking my driveway and over my property, that sort of thing. It had nothing to do with this, but I'm just saying, she was complaining about people living next door to her, kind of find out that she did that downtown and the people next door to us knew about it. I understand. I'm just so passionate about this because I know that they don't have the space for this. I'm not interested in having to move my vehicle so that he can park. It should not be an impact on me or anyone else. And I don't care about what they think. I don't care about what they feel. I don't care if anyone doesn't like me. That's not my issue. My issue is my safety. My issue is about the gas line. My issue is about the fact that this was done in a snakish kind of way, and it was known from the very beginning, and they did it anyway and didn't anticipate anyone coming down here. That's why I'm here.
Where do you understand the gas line to be?
The gas, yes, sir. Yes, sir. The gas line, yes, sir. You see this piece right here?
Yes, sir.
That was actually encased in the dirt for 60-plus years.
So was this not prepared to have access to the gas line?
No. Well, what happened was when they laid the concrete, because when they laid the concrete, like they're trying to put it on a decline so you can meet the street, okay? But as they were laying that concrete, they discovered that that gas valve was sticking up this much out the ground. And what they tried to do was cover it up with the mud from the cement. But when it rained, it washed away. Okay, so here's a 60-year-old gas line that's already been serviced about a crack. Now, I've too noticed that where these parking strips are, they've actually depressed. This vehicle is over 5,000 pounds. It actually put a 5,000-pound a downward force on that lawn, and this is where the gas line is, right up under there. The gas line is running, okay.
Does it appear here today?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it's visible and you see it and you can
Yes,
get
sir.
access to it,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That gas line is running down and to the left. That's why it was done the way it was, because they already knew last year that they needed a permit for it, and they waited for the what's called this malware or ransomware for Baltimore City, federal, state, and local government.
Mr. Baumgart, I want to make sure I understand the
Sure.
permit that we have here. So it reflects remove 10 linear feet of curb and install 50 feet of driveway apron and footway. Can you translate that for me?
Cut out 10 feet of the curb.
Yeah, so that's a curb cut, I'm assuming.
Correct. And then grade the apron so that it is sloped downwards.
Right.
So the vehicle can then enter that driveway, and that square footage is probably the size of a standard 10-foot apron.
Okay, so that doesn't address the two tracks at all.
Yeah.
That's correct. So the Department of Transportation, that permit addresses the actual curb cut itself, because that is both on city property, which is the curb itself, and then the apron, which is private property.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, but it would stop at that sidewalk line. It is correct that that permit was applied for during the ransomware issue. So that may be a reason why it didn't get shuttled over to zoning for review
Right.
prior to the permit being issued.
So effectively, the curb cut covers this part where the line is
That's
on
correct.
down to the street, but not the portion of the
That's correct.
And if we were, and I'm not saying we are, but if we were to grant a variance, would a building inspector, would a building permit have to be sought, and a building inspector would have to review this? Is that correct?
That's correct. The board also has the authority to request the Department of Transportation to review, again, the portion of the curb or the apron, if it is anywhere near a gas line, to re-inspect it for that purpose as well.
Just to make you aware, the work was done before the permit was asked for.
We
I
understand.
contacted Mr. Dorsey. That's how they got involved and the permit was asked for.
We understand
Yeah, absolutely.
chronology.
Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am?
Yes, I would like to say that I'm a licensed social worker. I know about ethics. I didn't do that to you. Please don't do that. I'm a licensed social worker. I know about ethics. There's no trick in my game. The contractor told me that was the time that he could do it because he had other jobs. And so that's what we went with. It had nothing to do with the what was going on in the city. That was so far from my mind. Had nothing to do with that. And I wish I'd known, BG&E has been out here, been out to the house twice. That is not a live wire. They said, do you have a neighbor that has something against you? I said, I sure do.
Well, why was BG&E out there?
Because someone called.
To check this particular?
Correct, and they've been out there twice, and 2 times. The first one came, and he says, we got to call a complaint, and so we're coming out here. And then I wasn't home, but my uncle told me. And so the BG&E guy, my uncle said, he walked away. The second time, 10 o'clock at night, I came to the door. My husband and I went to the door, and that was the gentleman that says, I'm sorry I'm out here this time of night, but we had a neighbor that called and complained about the valve. And so he looked in it. He says, whoever did the concrete, I see that you had a concrete, or it looks like you just had something newly installed. He said, they did it right. He said, we put this here. He said, so it's nothing wrong. He said, the only complaint I could see, if somebody wanted them to raise the cement, you would just have to raise the cement so it could be level. But he said it's nothing wrong with the way they did it. And had I known, I would have,
But this was not a city inspector, this was a.
that was from BG&E with the valve. And they said it's perfectly fine. It's not a live wire in there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
I have something to say about it.
We're done, ma'am.
Oh.
It's the appellant, the opposition, and the appellant. I'm sorry.
I'm
Did
the opposition also, so what do
Yes,
you
she is.
mean?
Yeah.
And I signed the paper that said I had wanted to say something about this.
It appeared to me that when it went over to to the appellant, that we were done. I'll allow you that opportunity because it wasn't clear that you were not finished
Well, yes,
speaking.
well, I mean, her name is on the list.
I understand that, and sir, and you began to speak and took the
did.
floor, so that's fine. But if you have something to add that hasn't been stated, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Shelley Arrington, and I live at 2401 Albion Avenue, right across the street from where this driveway was placed. The first time when she was attempting to put the pavers in, and as Richard said, the contractor stopped because of that gas valves, okay? She said something to me, and I told Shay that you have to have a permit to put this driveway in. If the permit, as you already know, would have been submitted, then of course it would have went to the zoning committee, and it would not have been approved because it's a two-way street, as he said. It's too tight. You can't see over the bush when you're coming out. It's right there on the edge of their property, of the grass. You can't see over that bush. As a matter of fact, one day last week, it was a car that was coming down the street, and because the person was over near the curb lane, okay, when he was proceeding to come out of the driveway, he didn't see the car until the car was passing the driveway, and he jammed on his brakes. I literally saw this. It's going to be an accident or a fatality with a pedestrian. I know that for a fact. It's too tight. And I said something to her about it. I worked for the Department of Transportation for 39 years, and I spoke to her about this before it was done.
Okay.
With the procedure.
Anything else, ma'am?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak.
If there's anything else, yeah, I'm not saying there has to be. I'm just asking, giving you the opportunity as the appellant to speak last.
I was told that I could put the car could be parked on the side of the house or the rear. We don't have a alley, but it's got grass in it. There's no way to get back there. If I could put the car, or my uncle could drive up, because it's for him. If he could drive up on the side of the house, and I believe my husband provided a drawing, if he could drive up on the side of the house, we would do that. It's just not enough room there. So we didn't think that anything was wrong with putting it out there because we were not aware of the zoning. And Shelley's right. She did talk to me about a permit. And as I stated, when I got that permit, I thought I was done because I paid $280 for that. I wouldn't have paid $280 for a permit if I didn't know there was another step, because I wanted to make sure that we did the right thing.
Sure.
And so that's why we did that. And there are other houses, as I stated, that have those driveways. My uncle's old. There's hardly ever, and we all work. I don't know how people can see so much. And we work. There's a retired fireman up the street. He doesn't. But I would still need the curb cut to get up to my house to drive, so my uncle could drive on the side of the house. The only thing is that the car would not be visible on the side curb, because if we had enough room, he would have to drive all the way up to the side of the house. I still would have to do the track or the full driveway, and I would still have to do the curb cut for him to even drive up to get to the side of the house.
Okay, very well. Thank you, ma'am. Next case is 2019-235, 1729 Gwynns Falls Parkway. David Pelta.
How are you, Mr. Chairman?
Good afternoon, sir.
Members of the board.
Sir,
First off, I'd like to tell you.
Hold on. We have this to continue use as a 10 dwelling units, is correct?
sir.
All right. Could you swear, we got to get you sworn, so everything you say.
Benjamin Woodard.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely do.
Your name is Benjamin West,
Woodard, Woodard.
and
Contractor in Baltimore City for almost 40 years.
Okay. Now, may I ask if we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property was authorized for use by the board last for 10 dwelling units with a maximum of 13 residents total in 1977. This is an appeal that's cited in the comment from the Planning Department, appeal number 75277X. The property is currently vacant, and there is a provision in the zoning code which states that, and this provision is section 18-307, whenever the active and continuous operation of a non-conforming use or part of that use has been discontinued for 12 consecutive months, the use is an abandonment, and the property therefore needs to return to conformity with the zoning in effect at the time. This particular property requires 1,100 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. So for 10 dwelling units, there would be a requirement to have 10,450 square feet of lot area. The lot itself only encloses 2,740 square feet. So obviously the building is far out of compliance with the current zoning code requirement. For this technical reason, the Department of Planning is recommending disapproval of the application because the amount and proportion of lot area variance needed for approval is excessive in relation to the amount required by the zoning code for 10 dwelling units. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Sir, could you tell us about your project?
Yes, sir.
With specific reference to,
I'm sorry, excuse me.
with specific reference to what planning has
Yes, sir.
stated.
It's 10 units. It's been 10 units since 1957. It's already plumbed, electric meter, the whole deal. What we're doing is working hand in hand with the Historical Society to put it back, its luster and beauty that Baltimore once had. Out here working diligently to make sure things are done properly, but we need it to stay the 10 so we don't have to do major renovation.
When was it last operated as a 10 dwelling unit?
2 years ago.
22 years ago. 2 years ago.
Was it more than that? It's about 2 years.
No. It's been vacant for 7.
Sir, what's your
My name's David Pelta. I'm the owner.
Okay. Do you have an idea of when it was last utilized as a 10 dwelling unit?
Well, it's been vacant for about 7 years, but before that it was, I believe, 10 units.
Yes, I believe it is.
Probably a better question is how long has it been vacant? It's been vacant for about 7 years. And Mr. Baumgartner, with regard to what is the impact of the vacancy, or I'm sorry, the vacancy and the abandonment, I guess, of the property as a 10 dwelling unit?
So the property is a non-conforming structure, given the bulk regulations for that zoning district.
Yes, sir.
But the use itself is conforming, because it's in an R6 or an R7, I forget which one. So Mr. French, I was expecting you to go into 18412 about exceptions for multifamily structures and the property, any property with 4 or more dwelling units that goes vacant as a non-complying structure would lose one of those dwelling units. But you went for 18307, which I thought was interesting. Not to put you on the spot, but was there a reason for that, or? Okay. Mr. Chairman, the 18307 deals with use.
Yes, sir.
Again, unless I'm missing something, the use of the structure is not conforming for the zoning district. So it's the actual bulk regulations controlling density. So I believe the correct provision would be 18412, which says whenever the active and continuous use of a dwelling unit in a non-conforming multifamily structure has been discontinued for 12 consecutive months, the number of dwelling units allowed to continue in the structure is reduced by 1. So that would take this from a 10-unit building down to a 9-unit building. unless I'm missing something. I'm looking at staff. I believe that's the provision that would apply in this case. So at the most, you could get 9 units out of the building.
Right, so, okay, I guess what I'm asking then, so no matter what, we're not going to be able to have the 10 unit since it's already been that way for 20 years?
Well, it's been that way for 20 years, but it's been not that way for the last 7 years while it was vacant. And the new code, or at least the code provision, there's an impact, there's an effect.
Even though
if
it's framed for all this and plumbed for all this, this is 100%, you know?
Well, I
That's the
think
part
Mr.
I'm not understanding. I mean, when we $300,000 loan to make sure that this place is gorgeous in Baltimore, a place that we all love, so. I
But
mean,
you're spending that $300,000, or somebody is, in relation to what the code requires and allows.
Bringing it up to code, I mean, what I'm saying.
Well, no, the code as it exists. And so the code as it exists says that if it has been vacant and abandoned for a period of time,
Yes, sir.
you lose 1 dwelling unit. If it's been abandoned, not in continuous use for at least 12 months, and we know that at this point that it's not been used as a 10 dwelling unit property for at least 7 years. And so fortunately, it's only a reduction of 1 unit as opposed to 7 units. So under the current code, and again, unless the code has changed, that's what would allow you to have something different. But under this current code, and reading it in conjunction with the factual history of this particular property, the most the board would be authorized to approve is a 9 dwelling unit property.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy with whatever you give us. I'm just saying, you know, I'm not quite sure understand sometimes how the city works. I mean, you got people in here that are really trying to do the betterment of the city, come in and spend money. We just bought another one down, you know, street from that. And, you know, guys like us that are coming in and trying to spend our money in the city, when now we're gonna have to go and, you know, do some renovations on this with this 1 unit that we won't have, that we won't get.
But I guess I would just add very, very briefly that this property could support 3 dwelling units by right. So the zoning code says you can have 3 dwelling units, and obviously there's a history of many more.
Yes,
If there's a history of many more, those many more are very teeny tiny dwelling units that very, very few people could reasonably live in. So the zoning code is trying to control to make sure that we don't have tenement housing like we had in Baltimore for half of a century. Furthermore, the purpose of the reduction by 1 is to keep properties in use, right? If a property is not conforming and it stays used and it goes from one owner to a second owner, that's great. Keep that going at 10 units. I'm very glad to hear that it's been 7 years since it's been occupied, because the visual of this property is pretty horrendous.
It is.
So 7 years vacant, that kind of makes sense. I'm very glad that it wasn't 1 or 2 years.
Yes, sir.
So that's the purpose behind that code provision.
Okay, I got that. Let me make one more plea, and then I'll shut up.
Knock yourself out.
On the old zoning card, no, sir, here, Mr. Chairman, I'm saying, I'm willing, and we're willing, we're partners, 3 of us, you know, to the 13-person rule if we get to 10 units. I mean, I'm up for that, instead of losing our.
What,
I don't know
what are you
understand what you're
talking
saying.
about?
I think what Baltimore City did before, this is a zoning card from the old,
Right.
you know, 1957 to us.
Well, I
And
think
what
that's-
they did was they made a stipulation. They said, you can have the 10 units, but you cannot have any more than 13 people occupy the building, which I said, oh, you know what, because everybody's like, well, what the, I would be more than willing to do that if you would let us keep the 10, please.
And that's from
It's been 20 years
1977.
since 1957.
Well, that's the point, sir. The
I
code has been
understand, sir.
updated
Well,
and
then
changed.
If you're not going to give it to us, you're not going to give it to us. I mean, there's, you know.
Well, there's certain authorities that we have and certain discretion that we have, and
Yes, sir.
there's discretion that we don't have. And we can't go beyond what the code
can't give it
allows
to
us
you.
to do.
Okay, I'm
So-
just, why did they give it to us then? Or they-
That's
because they
Different
changed
code,
it?
sir.
Yeah,
The code was changed in
and
2017.
that's 1977.
I understand.
I mean, you're happy to, I welcome you to review the code, because that's what we're here to enforce.
The code is giving you 9, it could give you 3, so
I'm okay with the 9. I'm okay.
All right, anything is further? All right, thank you for your presentation. Do you want us to keep this, or you want to hold on? Yeah, do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys have a great day.
You do the same, sir. Calling the case of 2019-239, 505 South Caroline Street and 507 South Caroline Street. Adam Carballo. Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
And we have this, Mr. Caballo, to consolidate lots and construct 4-story, single-family dwelling with front-loaded garage. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do we swear the witnesses?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, we do.
Okay, do we have any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is located in the Fells Point Historic District. It's also within the mapped 500-year floodplain, both of which introduce certain constraints on what the applicant is able to do with the property. The other thing that is a factor in this situation is this particular pair of lots, which would be consolidated, only have an existing structure remaining on one side, and therefore the applicant is not able to get this rebuilding classified as a row house infill, which then has effects on requirements for lot area, for setbacks, and so on and so forth. Because this property is located in the Fells Point Historic District, the actual design of the building that's being proposed is going to be subject to approval by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. And the applicant has met with staff in the Planning Department and also in the Historic Preservation section of the department to discuss this proposed building. The other thing that's a factor here is the floodplain and the requirement basically that they make every effort not to use the street level for residential purposes, which then produces a need to build a building higher to compensate for the fact you can't use the street level necessarily totally for residential purposes. So in the opinion of the department, one of the variances that would obviously be justified in this situation would be a height variance or approval of a conditional height of up to 45 feet rather than the standard 35 feet that's allowed by right. There are design issues also with what was submitted with this application, and the applicant is continuing to work with planning staff on resolving those matters. The department is recommending that approval of this application be subject to these conditions: that the lots known as 505 South Caroline Street and 507 South Caroline Street are consolidated before commencement of construction of the proposed dwelling, that all construction and improvements are completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation, and that separate approval of reuse of the curb cut on Caroline Street to give access to the front-loaded garage included in the dwelling structure is obtained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Mr. Caballo, if the board were to be favorable toward your application, are those conditions acceptable to your client?
This is my client, Jeff Rogers. He's nodding, I believe. Yes, they are. Yes.
Okay. And tell us about your project.
Yes, the project is located just off the corner of Eastern Avenue and South Caroline Street. You might recognize the corner building's a 2-story historic brick structure. There are 3 vacant lots to the south, and there's the Handlebar Cafe, which is sort of a renovated warehouse-style building. This property is actually the 2 consolidated lots are these sort of undersized, skinny lots to the south. What we proposed to do is build a single-family structure on that lot. The footprint closely mirroring the corner building of 1501 Eastern Avenue, which is also owned by Mr. Rogers here. We are proposing to have to sort of reuse the existing curb cut, which we will apply for a right-of-way variance for, using the ground floor really as parking as well as utility only. There's really not going to be any interior living space on that ground floor in reaction to the 500-year floodplain. On the second floor, have traditional living room, dining room, kitchen. With an unusual shaped lot as of this, it's not really reasonable to provide a 20-foot rear yard setback just because of the shape of the lot. Also the lot coverage in order to get a reasonable size house, and we're talking about a house that's 27.5 feet deep by 29 feet wide. So a wide row house, however, not a very deep row house. So we're utilizing this almost square proportion to provide a decent sized house, but this is not a mansion by any means. On the upper floor, we'd have 2 bedrooms. And then we are utilizing a fourth level that is set back from the front parapet by 10 feet. Again, taking into consideration the design manual requirements for an upper floor so that we can provide a third bedroom to the property. As far as materials, we, in order to kind of reduce the massing, we did meet with the design review committee of Fells Point and Federal Hill last night. We have a sort of an ongoing conversation with them, as well as members of the planning department, and as well as Eddie Leon with the planning department as well. We're talking about, how we can, properly mass the building. We are on an area of South Caroline Street that has quite a bit of service garages, overhead doors, larger commercial structures. With the Handlebar Cafe being our adjoining neighbor, which is 31 feet tall, we're sort of in that same scale with the overhead door. If you look on the opposite corner of the Eastern Avenue intersection, we have H&S Bakery warehouse space. We have there's a Fells Point auto body is there. There's also a cleaning service there. There's a number of overhead garage doors that are within the existing fabric along South Caroline Street that we're sort of, making a nod to and sort of trying to fit in with that fabric.
And the deck will be set back, it looks like 8 feet on the roof?
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, and that deck will actually be concealed by a parapet wall. It will not be visible in any way. Obviously, also across the street from this is a 6-story city-owned garage. And there is, from what I understand, a 5-story apartment building going across the street, too. So as far as the context of the scale, the massing, and even the use as a single-family house, I think it sort of fits pretty well within the context. And we're sort of responding to those the sort of specific site features.
Great. And will this building be attached to either of its neighbors?
It will be. It will share a property line with the Handlebar Cafe. This property on the corner, which is 1501 Eastern Avenue, also owned and developed by my client, Jeff Rogers. We are going to be utilizing this lot here as a parking pad. So it will only be technically be a semi-detached property, which I guess if we look at variance request number 5, interior side yard minimum of 10 foot. We are asking for a 0-foot side yard, so we can actually build to the property line. Otherwise, if I have to come back 10 feet for the side yard, it really starts to make this property very, very small.
That unimproved area in between, the two structures, is that parking for this particular project or parking for the building?
Parking for 1501, the historic building on the end, which, again, that building is 2 stories. It's, 26 by 26 square. It's a very small building. In order to kind of make it, usable and sort of viable, we're instead of trying to overdevelop this, we could have easily put 3 houses here. We chose to be reserved, do 2 houses instead, but then provide the parking so that they're a little bit more, usable, instead of just kind of cram as many bedrooms and volume in. So,
Very good. Any questions for the board?
I do have 3 letters of support. One from the Handlebar Cafe right next door.
Okay.
The Douglas District, which this is in, which is part of Fells Point,
Mhm.
and some other business owners, MIY, down Eastern Avenue. And we did meet with the Fells Point Design Review Committee last night, and they agreed, we don't have a letter, but they agree with massing and the height of everything. And again, we'll work with them and with CHAP as far as the materials to make it look right.
Well, okay. We'll put
I've been doing this for a number of years, did some over on High Street in the CHAP district also like 3 years ago. And so I'm a qualified builder and developer.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And with that, I believe we're off the record.